All right, welcome to the Young Turks coverage of the first presidential debate of 2020. It's showtime, everybody. Not at the Apollo, though. All right, we're in Cleveland. We're going to do live play-by-play coverage, and we're going to have very thorough analysis afterwards. Let's start to check in to see. Okay, good. They have not started the debate yet. As soon as they start talking, obviously, we will go to that. Guys, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, John Iadarola with you. Michael Schur is in Cleveland. And we will talk to him after the debate as well. I've already talked to him a little bit, and he's given me a sense of it. And there's basically an eerie silence, if you will, in Cleveland. There's not very many surrogates. There's almost no supporters of Trump or Biden in the area. I have excellent news for you guys on polling, state of mail-in voting. The panic on the Republican side has completely begun. They're in the Donald Trump, in essence, is what we thought he was. He's an accidental political suicide bomber for the Republican Party. Every Republican consultant is saying, "What are you doing? Stop talking against mail-in voting." Republicans are historically better at getting mail-in voting. They've lost that advantage completely, and now they're incredibly worried about losing the Senate. And longtime senators are in absolute panic mode. Trump has done untold damage to their efforts because of how aggressively he is attacking mail-in voting. And now the latest polls coming out of Pennsylvania are disastrous for him. 2 out of the last 3 polls have him losing by 9 points in Pennsylvania. Biden is within 1 point in North Carolina. If North Carolina is a swing state, this election is over. OVAH. Okay, I know. Jinx, etc. Okay, I get it. You're 2016. I'm traumatized by it. I got it. I'm not traumatized by 2016. We saw 2016 coming. The other day, somebody asked me about the tweets about, oh, yeah, did you? And I showed 3-4 different tweets from 2 days before the election going, to brace for impact. And this time I'm telling you the opposite. Republicans better brace for impact, because if any semblance of reality holds and they don't do massive level, historic, epic cheating, it looks like right now they're going to get steamrolled. So obviously tonight is very, very important for that. And these the news cycles are so much bigger and stronger and more frequent these days. It's almost like climate change has hit politics. And so with these severe news cycles, it is certainly possible that anything can happen. And if anything could happen that would affect the election, it would be in a debate. It would be tonight. And the other 3 debates that are coming up, or at least 2.5. I can't imagine the VP debate being so dramatic that it would affect the election. But we'll cover that as well for you guys. By the way, since they haven't started yet, and that buys us a little bit of time, before I go to Anna and John, I just want to say, guys, tyt.com/go, that's what powers us. So we try to get to 200,000 every month just for this year. We made it every month except this one. We have 1 day left, and we're well short. We're about only 50% of the way. So that's what allows us to do this coverage and allows us to do strong programming, because we're not relying on corporations and advertisers. We're relying on you guys. So tyt.com/go. If you could participate in that, it would make all the difference. And if you're watching on YouTube, membership is forever, and you could, well, it's for as long as you want it. You can hit the join button below to make that happen. If you're not watching on YouTube, you're watching on our other partners and platforms, tyt.com/join. Okay, sorry, Anna and John, I got so excited, but let's go to Chris Wallace, the moderator of this debate.
Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open discussion for the rest of each segment. Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the commission or the 2 candidates. This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed the candidates will not shake hands at the beginning of tonight's debate. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say. No noise except right now, as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump, and the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden.
I got a noise for him.
All right, by the way, I did not agree to not making any noise during the debate. And so we will certainly be talking to everyone. So look at Biden. I try to show energy. Okay, I like it. And guys, remember, share the stream and like the stream. It makes a big difference. Let's get everybody to watch the real version of the debate. Let's go back.
A lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight: why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong? And where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way, In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time. Even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is to try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Thank you, Joe.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is, and that say occurs when they vote for a United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I have nothing, I'm not opposed to the justice, she seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be held pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election. If he wins the election and the Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February.
All right.
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as a say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
He's elected to the next
during
election.
that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And the 100 million people, Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialist. You're going to socialist medicine.
We're now into, gentlemen, we're now into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number one, he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any. And one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won, were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said, and it's not what your party has said.
That is simply
your party
a lie.
doesn't say it. Your party wants to go socialist medicine.
My party is
and
me.
socialist
right
healthcare.
Now, I am
and
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act? And
Joe, you've had
pre-existing-
308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me
I'm
about
happy
this.
to talk about
And
this.
if you were here,
Look,
it
here's
wouldn't
the
be
deal.
200, it would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You
Late
didn't
on
want
the
me to
draw.
ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban
All right, gentlemen,
Europe,
which
which was heavily
Mr. President,
You would have
Mr.
been much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr. President,
much later.
Mr. President,
You're talking about 2 million people.
You're not gonna be able to
President, as
shut
the
him up.
moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is already
You don't know it's on the
begun.
ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is it
you
on the
said
ballot? It's not
you're-
on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the
I
court.
don't think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
Donald, would you
And you
just be
don't
quiet
know
for a
her view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't
don't
know her
know.
view.
Well, all right. Let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So on health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election.
So, guys, Biden's got to be stronger. He should say, "Wait, are you for or against Roe versus Wade? What do you mean it's not on the ballot?" He's got to attack. He's letting Trump bully him. Sorry, let's go back right away.
The last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never, in these 4 years, come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan
Yes,
to
I have.
replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well,
I got rid of the individual mandate.
I'm going to give you an
Excuse me.
opportunity.
I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a
That is
big
not a
chunk of
comprehensive
That
plan.
is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst
I
part of
didn't ask,
Obamacare.
Sir.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating him,
worst
not
part of
me.
Obamacare.
Let me ask my
Well,
question.
I'll ask Joe. The
no,
individual mandate was the most unpopular
Mr. Vice
aspect of
Mr.
Obamacare. I
President,
got rid of it.
I'd like
and
you
we
to,
will protect
Mr.
people
President,
with
I'm the
pre-existing
moderator of this
conditions.
debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer your
Go ahead.
question. You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump health care plan?
Fine. Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something, that there's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against Big Pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care.
What about
All of the
pre-existing
things that
conditions?
we've done,
He has not cut
insulin.
health
I give
care.
you an example. Insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people. The cost. I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water. You want to know the truth. So cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because
When in
they
fact-
pay just a tiny fraction.
As I say,
of
this
what
is
we do.
open discussion.
No,
Let
but
me
this
ask
is
you about,
big,
this
this
you'll be
is
happy,
big stuff.
Sir, you'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
well, if I can
sorry.
ask you the question, it will
Not what your
end.
party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's
only.
only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option, number one.
Joe, you
Number
agreed
two.
with Bernie Sanders, who's
I
far
did-
left, on the manifesto,
When
we
you-
call it.
when
And that
manifesto-
gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
Are you saying
I'm not
you
going
didn't
to listen
agree?
to him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm
Not by
here
much.
standing facing you, old buddy.
Pocahontas would have left
Well,
2 days
I tell
early.
you,
You would have lost every primary.
All he knows how to
on
do
Super
is hurt.
Tuesday. You got
Look,
very lucky.
here's the deal. I got very lucky. I'm going to get very lucky tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to
With
make
what?
sure because
With what?
here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just
agree.
want to
Hey,
make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
God, I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has,
You'd be
you know,
surprised.
you pick
You'd be surprised.
the
Go ahead,
wrong
Joe.
guy, the wrong night at the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders to the
The
manifesto.
whole idea.
Let him.
There is no manifesto, number
Please
one.
let him speak, Mr.
Number
President.
two.
You just lost the left.
Number two.
You just lost the left. You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan
Folks,
absolutely
folks,
agreed
do you
to,
have
and
any
under that
idea
plan,
what
you have
this clown's
socialized,
doing?
They call it
Mr.
Do you
Mr.
have any
President.
socialized medicine.
Mr.
Well, I
President.
tell you what, he is not for any help for people needing health care because
Bernie?
because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two,
yeah.
there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give them
Number
better
three.
health care at a much lower price because
and by
Obamacare
the way, he doesn't
is
know
no
how.
good.
He doesn't know how
I've
to do
already
that.
fixed it.
He has never
I've
offered
already
a plan.
fixed it to an extent.
He has never
Obamacare,
done a
as you
single
might
thing.
know, but probably don't. Obamacare
Gentlemen, you realize
is no
if you're
good,
both
Joe.
speaking at the
It's no
same
good,
time,
and it's too expensive.
let the president go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better. And I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guarantee pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed that. They shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people. Okay? I said, you got to run it so well.
That's what he's
and I
known for.
just had a meeting with them. They said the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive.
I got you.
Premiums
I
are
got
too
it.
high, and
That's
it
what his
doesn't work.
people- that's
So
what his people
we
said.
do want to
No,
get rid of it.
It's
Chris,
an
we
open
want to get rid of it.
I
and
understand
give
it, sir,
something
but I have
that's
to
cheaper and
give you
better.
roughly equal time.
Good.
Please let the vice president talk.
Good.
He has no plan for health care. Of
course we do.
Please.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right.
He's
I have
against it.
one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact, it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you going to pack the court?
Make sure you, in fact, let people know
He doesn't want
you're
to answer the
senator.
question.
I'm not going to answer the question
Why wouldn't you answer that
because
question?
the
You wanna
question
put a lot of
is the
new
question
Supreme Court
is
justices,
the
radical
question-
left.
Will you
Who
shut
is
up,
on,
man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
This
Who's
is
on your
so
list?
right.
Gentlemen,
This is-
I think
This
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the
unprecedented.
court.
We have
I'm not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They sure do.
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject. So let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward. In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the Chinese, the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan.
Wrong.
I laid out
Sir,
back
it's
in
2
March
minutes.
exactly
So
what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to you.
You have 2 minutes, sir.
If we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic because you didn't think I should have closed our country.
No,
Wait a minute.
It's his 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of you Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you
done.
didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was no economic recession.
Sir, you made a
There
was no recession.
You made a point. Let him answer it.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far more people. Far more people.
And,
you would have been
and by the way,
months late.
his own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up. He said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, We're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
we
trust
Dr.
Johnson
Fauci.
& Johnson, Pfizer?
Okay,
by the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future, because you both have touched on two of the questions I'm going to ask. Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives.
God.
It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call them left, I don't know what I call them.
The head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slaoui?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just like
He said it's a
Redfield.
possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also
I'm
be
talking about
after
when it's
that.
generally available. Not when
Well,
it'll
we're
be.
going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up. Logistically, they're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be
this
delivering.
is the same man
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
by Easter this would be gone away. By the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the same
That
man.
was said sarcastically,
That was
and you
him.
know that.
I
That was said sarcastically.
And so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
You'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine
I
sooner
want to
than
pick
that.
up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying
Everybody
you can't, or
knows.
Senator
And
Harris is saying
no,
you can't trust the scientists.
No, you can trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can't trust
She said the public health
Did say
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not, they're the people, and by the way.
I spoke to the
and
scientists that are in charge.
By the way.
They will have the vaccine very
does-
soon.
Let him finish.
Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID? He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't even tell you. He's on record as saying it. He panicked or he just looked at the stock market, one of the two, because guess what? A lot of people died, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
So-
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing.
Well, let's have this debate.
And if you
We'll
would
see
have
who's
had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
No,
If you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
You see,
and it's
We're going to
going
get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
Okay.
It's going up fast. I
Okay.
look forward to talking.
When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide
Tell that
them
to Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi and Schumer.
By the way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with him in the Senate. And he sits on his golf course. And, well, I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play more than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact?
Well, he wants to shut down this country, and I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd.
I want to move on to another subject. I want to move on to another subject.
But those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
Respond to that.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
I think
the
masks
efficacy
are okay.
of
You have to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say this.
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money.
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, if everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite.
Well, look
serious.
at Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
He did not say the opposite.
We got a little bit more than a minute left in this
masks
segment.
Are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks good. I'm okay with masks.
I want to ask you both about one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with...
Because nobody will show up.
People with...
What's true. Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
but are you not worried about
it spreading president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you not worried about the disease issues, sir?
Well, so far, we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay.
By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative effect.
No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 35,000, 40,000 people at these rallies.
Just quickly finish up, because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encouraged them not to.
All right.
He's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy? Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown.
Much faster.
In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now instead of still 204,000 people is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening at some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear masks. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, when you look, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right. Your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's just
wrong statement.
Yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right. Your time is up, sir. Well, we are going to get to
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open. I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out? When it took
Gentlemen, we're going to get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers. I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax returns.
I went. You'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good. And I built a great company.
I'm asking you a specific question, which is.
Let me tell you.
I understand all of that. I understand all of that. No, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 750.
Millions of dollars. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build a building and we get tax credits, like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes on the money a school teacher makes is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
you're the worst president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
Let me just tell you, Joe. I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward, because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what is the analysis done by Wall Street firms. Points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth, because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make the federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it
Billions
before
of
when you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was
Right.
your tax proposal.
I got it done. And you know what happened?
You got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is
Mr.
busted.
President,
Let me finish.
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for the American people.
But let me.
Excuse me.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look,
Mr.
we
Vice
inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't booming.
He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1929.
Is it fair to say he blew it when fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse me, Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. Part of my standard fare.
I'm the guy that brought back the automobile industry.
All right, let him.
We brought back. I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having.
And they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit with Mexico.
China ate your lunch, down 18%. China ate your lunch, Joe. And no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
You've asked your question, let him answer.
None of that is true.
Oh, really? He didn't get $3.5 million?
Mr. President,
Mr.
President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice,
he got $3.5 million.
It is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
Now,
it's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burisma pay him $183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr. President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who?
And
the media?
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people who testified under oath.
So let me ask you this.
No, go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to you.
He got $3.5 million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh, really?
I did it
I'd
honorably.
like to know who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't do a good job. With you,
Go
they
ahead.
said,
You
"Look,
get
here's
the,
the
wait a
deal."
minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me.
Hey, let me just say to you,
No. Mr. President.
$3.5
Mr.
million,
President.
Joe.
that is simply
Why did
not
he
true.
deserve $3.5 million from
It-
Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My
already...
family,
No, let him go.
my family
Already
lost
wrote.
a fortune by coming down and helping
Go
us
ahead.
with
Go ahead,
government.
sir.
And that's such a...
they're right
here. Mr.
That's such
President.
a
Every
great...
single one of them lost
This
a
is not
fortune
about
President.
my
coming and
family or
helping
his
us with
family. It's
government.
about your family,
They
the
didn't
American
collect
people.
$3.5 million
He
for
doesn't.
nothing.
That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
you
here.
should
All right,
Take
that's
Not
the, end
about
of
here.
that's the end of the
Shouldn't have
segment.
taken the money.
We're moving on.
He didn't take them.
Well,
Vice
it's a very-
President,
but Chris,
no,
can I be honest? It's a very important
Try to be
question.
honest.
No,
He stood up.
No,
he stood up,
the answer to
and
the
he
question is no.
threatened Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you
that
don't get rid of
is
the press.
absolutely
You know what, you're-
not
stop.
true.
You're on tape doing it.
You're going to
You're on
have
tape.
True.
Gentlemen.
Is-
I hate to raise
Chris,
my voice,
he's
but
on
it seems
tape.
to be, why shouldn't I be different than the two of you? So here's the
Got a
deal.
good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting
Well, that's
than
all
he
right,
has.
but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less
there's
than.
plenty.
No, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for Black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that.
It is who's
Now,
2
second,
minutes, sir.
second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African-American community.
So,
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with
he
racism?
did a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community. You have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that. Because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right.
What is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of a town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place, and you say peaceful protest? No, it's not, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else. And he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and, frankly, very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the racist.
You just don't know.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this than he does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism in America.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now.
Oh, my
but
Lord.
the reason is that
ridiculous.
the Democrats that run these
Absolutely
cities
ridiculous.
don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
and you
crime,
still haven't mentioned.
violent
Are you in
crime.
favare of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow it.
Are you in
and a little
favor
bit
of law and order? Go
Yes,
ahead,
I'm
say it.
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and
He
order.
loses
Law
left.
and order.
Let him answer.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly.
Okay.
And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more in ours.
All right, we're now.
He is president of the United States of America.
Mr. President,
every record in the
Mr.
book.
President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question.
Democratic-
There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is
cities.
crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. And you would see problems like you've never seen.
He would know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not.
So much
I was
better.
raised,
Go ahead. Wait a minute.
I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles on racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. Yeah. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means.
Let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police offices. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding in his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking about. He's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support.
Look,
he has no law enforcement
that's not
support.
true.
Almost
that's
nothing.
Look.
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead.
Look,
Think. We have time.
we don't have time to do
No,
anything.
think about it. Name one law enforcement group that came out and
I think,
supported
gentlemen,
you,
I think
Joe.
I'm going to take back the
There aren't.
moderator's
I don't
role,
think there are any.
and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted, and anyone who commits it.
But you've never called for the people, the leader. Excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really? Really?
Here's the thing.
I sent in the U.S. Marshals to get the killer of the young man in the middle of the street. They shot him, and for 3 days,
President Trump,
Portland wouldn't do anything. I had to send in the U.S. Marshals. They took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, you know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that. And so here's the,
all right.
But here's the point.
Go ahead,
the point
sir.
is that that's what he is, keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, every single solitary time.
Okay, and to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly criticized.
I have to answer his statement.
No, you have repeatedly.
Wait,
you have
just 1 second.
No, you've been talking
You
back
made
and
a
forth.
statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to end it.
Sir.
I would love to end it, and
You
we
know, if
would
you want to
very-
switch seats.
We would very quickly.
We could do that, but
I'd send in the National Guard, it would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay,
But they
good.
don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
That's right.
extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared
to do that,
specifically
but
do it?
Well,
I
go
would
ahead,
say,
sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go ahead.
supremacists and
Who would
right
you like me to condemn?
white
Proud Boys.
supremacists and right-wing
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem.
His
This
own
is a left-wing.
FBI director
This
said
is a
the
left-wing
threat
problem.
of white
Go ahead, sir.
supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you gotta be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what
Oh, really?
his
It's an idea.
FBI director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well,
we're
then
gonna-
you know what?
No,
He's wrong.
we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're
Everybody
moving.
gives you
When a bat
advice
hits
in
you
your
over the head, that's
administration.
not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is
administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas that are correct.
Antifa is a dangerous,
All right,
radical
gentlemen,
group.
we're now moving on to the Trump
And
and
you ought to be
Biden
careful with
records.
them. They'll overthrow you.
When a
in 2
president,
seconds.
I'm going to ask a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, There has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. It was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? Because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like, you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges, it's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused the recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head-to-head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $3.5 million.
And by the way, my son...
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and... why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word. Can you add
no, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you add back 30 seconds?
Yeah, yes,
okay.
You may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers, my son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent.
Are you talking about Hunter? Are you talking about Hunter?
I'm talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're talking about.
What happened?
He was thrown out, disarmed.
Go to the debate.
Once you
None of
became
that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made
son,
a fortune.
my son,
and he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he given tens of millions of dollars?
But he wasn't given tens of millions of dollars. That is totally discredited.
We've already been through.
Totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here.
$3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow.
Let's talk about
not true.
Gentlemen,
that report is totally discredited.
Mitt
Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful, clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very exciting.
You believe
for a lot of people.
that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of this planet?
I think a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they have forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down because of a lack of management.
But, sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars and trucks?
Well, not really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by $3,500.
In the case of California, they've simply ignored.
No, but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And I'm okay with electric cars, too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Right. Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. infrastructure. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that, in fact, is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion and say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. Right. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that, well, the fact is, it's all true. And here's the deal.
He's talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the building. No, it's the dumbest, most ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows too. That's not true either, right? This is a $100 trillion.
Look,
that's more money than our country could make in 100 years if we're
not
going
the case.
All right, let me
destroy our
because
country.
I actually, wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that.
$100 billion.
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
That's what he did say.
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
You make up.
We are going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now, on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. They didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. But the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen.
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is not my plan.
That's
the Green New
you want to rebuild every
is
building.
Not my plan.
I want to rebuild every.
If he knew anything about,
he made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay,
that is
what
not
he
true.
did.
Sir,
Is
you're done in this segment.
He called the military
Mr. Vice President,
stupid bastards.
I
and
did
he said
not
it on
say
tape. He said stupid bastards.
Please,
He said it.
Stop.
I would never say that.
Play
Stop.
it. Play it.
Go ahead, Mr. Vice President. answered his final question?
The final question is, I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you support the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
Do you support?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
Oh, you don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I support
that means you
the
just lost the radical left.
I support the Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment, election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election? And what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks, because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after Election Day? What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com, decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country is going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change? Or you get 4 more years of these lies?
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition, because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won, and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it, too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well, because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that,
sir,
all run by
2
Democrats.
minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump,
it's a rigged election.
You're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so, because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them. We don't like them. We don't like them.
But what
they
are you
throw
going to
them
do
out
about it?
left
There
and
are
right.
millions of ballots going out
What
right
you
now.
do
What
is
are
you
gonna
go
do?
and vote. You do a solicited ballot,
No,
and that's okay,
I know
or
your
you go and
complaint.
vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people
You go and vote. You go and
No,
vote
but
like
what I'm
they
saying is that what are you
like they
gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people.
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well.
There is no
This is not going to end well.
5 states have had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by election day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because
You're wrong. You're wrong.
I want to continue with you on this, Vice President Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes a statement like that.
Excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you. That is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me, Chris, when you have 80 million ballots,
I have a final
Senate
question.
and swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't. And already there's been fraud.
Mail service delivers 185 million pieces of mail a day.
In 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until Election Day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you
I'm
go first.
urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what,
does that mean,
from a common sense,
does that mean you're going to tell your people to take to the
street? It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
you think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. We count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until Election Day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots, that somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established. Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
You had an opportunity to respond.
Look at Carolyn Maloney.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what happened.
Vice President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to see an honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Honest ballot count.
We're going to leave it there. To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. The 2 vice presidential nominees, Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris, will debate at 9 p.m. Eastern that night. We hope you watch. Until then, thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's the deal, guys. We're going to do a very thorough analysis of this. We're going to tell you who we think won or lost. We're going to tell you who when Joe Biden made his best points, his worst points. Same with Donald Trump. I actually have Donald Trump telling the truth twice in this debate. Almost everything else was a lie. So I'll tell you the 2 times that he told the truth. And we've got Michael Shore in the building there, and he's going to report from there live as well. So we're going to have to take a quick break first. After the break, all of us, me, Anna, John, Michael, will weigh in on this. We'll give you a summary. The most important part of the debate was not the shouting and screaming. We'll also judge how the moderator did as well. There was one portion of the debate that I think will clearly be determinative in this debate and will make all the difference. So I want to make sure that you guys are around to see that. If you missed any portion of this coverage, you could become a member at any time. If you're watching on YouTube, you just hit the join button below to become a member. Don't miss any of our programming. And you can go to tyt.com/join if you're watching anywhere else. So let's take a quick break here, and we'll come right back and give you all that analysis when we return.
Do democracy. Vote.
You got it. Use it.
Vote. Demand democracy. Advocate for criminal, social, and environmental justice for all.
Engage in democracy.
Run for office.
You can be mayor, governor, president. Just run.
Democracy is powered by people like you and me.
Vote, advocate, engage. Visit naacp.org or text DEMAND to 40649 for more information.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you going to afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse it and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're going to do both. We're going to fight Trump and we're going to fight the establishment. It is not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
PragerU is a right-wing media outlet that gets $20 to $25 million a year from billionaire backers. TYT doesn't have billionaires cutting us checks, but the good news is that we don't need them. Okay. Bring it down. TYT can beat the right-wing media and their billionaire funders with contributions of just $200,000 a month from TYT fans donating to TYT.com/go. And we're already halfway to our goal. Look, whether you give $3 or $3,000, your contribution helps us press on. And it might sound like it's a lot of money, but remember, it's only 10% of what they get from billionaires in these giant checks. And with 10% of their money, we're mauling them. And we can continue to get that progressive message out to everybody. And since we're only accountable to you, our fans, and not the corporate backers, we can cover topics like Medicare for All, Green New Deal, and definitely getting money out of politics without having to look over our shoulder at which donors we might be upsetting. That is liberating. You guys liberate us. The Pragers of the world are accountable to the billionaires that give them money, and in turn, what do? They deliver propaganda on their behalf. We deliver the truth to our audience and are only accountable to you. We are the microphone of the progressive movement. Help us keep going by making a contribution today at tyt.com/go. Let's go beat those billionaires together. ShopTYT.com has new shirts like this one. And you're thinking, Cenk, what is that one? I can't see it other than the black. Yes, so I'll show it to you. If you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Yes! Now, you were practicing social distancing. This is over video. But overall, you get it. ShopTYT.com. All right, back on the Young Turks coverage of the first presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. First part of the analysis. Holy cow, that was a mess. Wow, that was the biggest train wreck of a debate I have ever seen. Cenk Uygur, Annika Sperry, John Idarola, Michael Sherwood, you guys. I have a pretty strong sense of who won the debate. I'm curious what you all think. We're going to talk it through with everybody. I think we're getting an echo from Michael's Skype. That's my sense of it. Okay, so there we go. All right, so and I'm going to read your comments throughout, and so many of you joined, and I'll try to get to you guys as well. I'm just going to read one YouTube super chat for now. both because it's a fun comment, and Gregory was so generous. Gregory Price says, the winner of this debate, John Idarola. I forgot to make popcorn. He didn't. I lose. So it's a nice light note to start in on. Okay, guys, I've got strong opinions, as you might suspect, and I'm sure you guys do too, on who won and what the critical moment of the debate was. But before I do any of that, I want to go to Michael first. Michael, you're in the media room in Cleveland. Any reaction from the media or anyone else there to what was a historically disastrous debate?
Yeah, Cenk, it's funny. I was in Cleveland in 2015 for the very first Republican debate of the 2016 cycle, and it was the first time that we'd seen Donald Trump as a candidate. It was a time where you'll recall when Megyn Kelly was moderating the debate, and you could really feel what was going on in the room. People were shocked, and some people were laughing. And I looked around. It's sort of on record how I've felt about Donald Trump for many years, but I looked around and I couldn't believe that people were laughing at him. Tonight, it was just quiet. It was stoic in here. People couldn't believe what was going on, and the way that Chris Wallace tried to corral the president, and the president wouldn't heed any of those warnings. And I think that there was a lot that was discomforting. I mean, you heard one candidate tell another candidate to shut up because that candidate wasn't allowing him to speak. This was a very, very strange room tonight, and it was a very strange place to be.
Yes, it's kind of it feels. I talked to you earlier, Michael. I see you now. You got to, of course, wear the mask because you're indoors, and there's many other people there. And there's like this eerie kind of silence over there. That's the sense and the vibe that I get from what's happening, because it's almost as if the country is on bated breath. Like, is this really going to work? Like, are we missing something? Right. Because, Michael, our whole lives covering politics, we have heard that being rude in a debate is a bad idea. And particularly people will say, consultants, pundits, et cetera, will say, you will lose female voters if you're too rude in a debate. Well, my God, if he's got to shatter the record on losing female voters after this debate, if that's anywhere near true. And I almost feel like the whole country is taking a breath like, what's going to happen? Right? Almost waiting for the polls on this debate to see the reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I think in what worked in that we didn't think would work in 2016, there is a sense again now that act has worn old and that people have seen. And I think the 2018 midterm elections are the greatest indicator of that. The voters that were Trump voters who then went back to the Democrats in the midterm elections were going back for that very reason. And it was laid bare tonight by Donald Trump. Now, we should also say that appeals to some people. Some people look at the bully and say he's being forceful. Some people say that he came at Biden with some facts and put Biden in his place and made Biden seem otherworldly to those who voted for Donald Trump. But I didn't see the debate that way at all. I thought that Biden seemed much more prepared than the president on facts, on issues, on being able to debate. And the points that the president scored were on the vice president's son, which didn't seem to me as something that voters, especially undecided voters, are looking at.
Okay, now guys, as we go through tonight, we're going to do a couple of things. We're always interactive. We try to get to you guys as much as possible because we all do this show together. So we do it together in terms of we don't rely on corporate sponsors to be the lifeline of this company. We rely on you guys. So if you want to help make coverage like this possible and this show possible, tyt.com/go. We're doing campaigns through the end of this year to make sure we're powered by you and only you. tyt.com/go to help that happen. And if you're watching on YouTube, you just hit that join button below to be a member. You can support us and get our videos and get all of our exclusive coverage at the same time. And normally I read your names as you subscribe. There's a lot of you out there, and I'll try to get to you throughout the night. Now, most important thing is let's do a summary of the debate. In my opinion, this debate was largely a tie because it was a train wreck. It's the biggest train wreck debate I have ever seen in my life. And tie goes to the person who's leading. And right now, Joe Biden is leading significantly. So now let's talk about who had upsides and downsides. So obviously the biggest downside for Donald Trump was he seemed incredibly rude, total bully, bull in a china shop, etc. Now, but there is a big question as to whether the American people will see that and think, well, he was strong and Biden was weak, or if they'll look at that and go, I can't stand that guy. Now, look, the folks who are Democrats and can't stand Trump already, their answer is obvious. The MAGA guys, their answer is obvious. But the critical middle, I don't know how they're going to react to it. But I can't imagine that any reasonable person looks at that and thought, oh, Trump was a guy who is, civil, and not that civility is the number one trait and we certainly don't think that, but is a decent human being who was having an exchange of ideas, had the facts at his disposal, and won the debate. On the other hand, Joe Biden in the beginning, I'll be honest, seemed shell-shocked when Trump came out guns blazing, interrupting everything he was saying. He couldn't get in a word in edgewise. He looked nervous. Now, the rest of the debate, Biden started picking up steam. He told Trump to shut up when he got his legs under him and stop your yapping. And it was a little bit of a cathartic moment for at least half the country when he said that. But to me, the biggest part of this debate, and why I think at the end of the day, Trump will not have gained anything from this debate, which is very problematic for him, as he's losing very badly, including in the swing states. We'll tell you about the polling a little bit later in this show. But the biggest moment was when Chris Wallace did a softball, and he was right to do it because it was a question that Trump has not answered easily in the past. He said, do you denounce white supremacists? Easiest question I've ever seen in a debate. And Trump would not say yes. He would not say yes. That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So because and when asked, he said, okay, give me specifics. Like, in other words, what kind of white supremacists are we talking about? By definition, here, if you ask me, hey, will you denounce white supremacists? Yes, I denounce all of them. Easiest thing. For him, he's like, well, it depends. Are we talking about the Klan? Are we talking about Nazis? Who are we talking about? Right? And so then when Chris Wallace mentioned Proud Boys as an example of folks who are overzealous vigilantes, and he didn't frame it that way exactly, but he mentioned, he's like, if you want a group, okay, fine. Now I'll give you one group that's not necessarily in the category of white supremacists, but that is in the category of taking some physical action at these protests, rallies, riots, whatever you want to call them, right? And for Proud Boys, he said, Trump said, I want them to stand by. Oh my God. So he's telling these guys who are on tape physically attacking peaceful protesters, stand by, which obviously means if I want vigilante violence, I'll ask for it. And at the very end of the debate, when, again, a super simple question that he's now been asked 5 times, will you accept the results of the election? And Trump would not give a clean yes. Biden gave a clean yes, and Trump wouldn't. Look, if that doesn't move Americans, then apparently America was never what I thought it was. That's my take. Anna, I want to go to you next.
Yeah, America was never what you thought it was. I think that Trump's presidency has revealed what America really is, how incredibly weak our democracy is, how all it takes is a strong man like Donald Trump to call the shots, to ignore the law, to not ever apologize for anything. This debate was a complete and utter disaster. Look, I think Biden did okay. There were a few moments where he threw a few jabs that I absolutely loved. But with the exception of those few jabs, there were some moments that were pretty devastating, in my opinion. Trump hits below the belt. He doesn't have any concern about civility or appearing presidential. At one point, Biden mentioned that he wasn't being presidential. Yeah, you should expect him to not be presidential. And Trump, of all presidents in this country, is the most target-rich environment of all time. And so go for it. Go for it. When he started talking about his son and how his son served in the military, I got really excited because you can tell that, like, he woke up a little bit and had, like, this passion and this, like, fury that really needed to come out more during the debate. For instance, at one point early in the debate, Trump mentioned in regard to lowering the price of prescription drugs, you could have done it in your 47 years in office, but you didn't. Lines like that are going to stay with people, right? So Biden needs to expect that, and he needs to immediately pivot to more than 200,000 Americans are dead because of the fact that you're a buffoon, you're incompetent, you only care about yourself, you're a narcissistic prick. Maybe don't use that language, but you get what I'm saying, right? But Biden came at it from like this incredibly like 1990s stylistic approach, and you can't do that. Like, you're dealing with Trump. Obviously be professional, but be strong. And I feel like that was lacking a little bit. That's not to take away from the fact that Donald Trump is a complete and utter disaster. I'm just saying that I want to see more strength from Biden.
So, Michael, I want to go to you next. Were you worried about Biden in terms of how strong he looked or didn't look? Because in the beginning of the debate, the sense I got from social media and everything else that I was seeing, and honestly, my own sense was, like it looks like he's getting steamrolled. What was your take on it?
I never felt that throughout the debate. Going into the debate, I watched a lot of Joe Biden's old debates, both for the Senate when he ran for president the second time, and then again when he was vice president. So I watched, I would say, 7 of Joe Biden's debates, not in their entirety. But what you learn when you watch a number of those debates is that Joe Biden's not a good debater, but he's not a bad debater. And I think we saw that in the Democratic primaries as well, where you come away and you say, oh, Joe Biden didn't do enough, but he stood there and he took it, and et cetera. I think that, going to what you said, Cenk, if the tie goes to the runner, if the tie in a debate goes to the person who's ahead in the polls, that's what you got out of Biden today. Because going into this debate, before we knew what a mess it was going to be, one of the things was, how is Joe Biden going to do? Is he going to stand up to it? Is he going to have facts? Is he going to seem prepared? Is he going to seem cogent, even though there's never been a time where he's ever seemed in the earliest of his career perfectly cogent or off the rails non-cogent? I think that's what you got from Joe Biden tonight, and I think that was probably enough. And I think seeing him fight back against a president who did seem off the rails, who's, in my opinion, whose act has gotten old to enough voters now, I don't think that he was able to swing anybody back, Donald Trump, tonight. I don't think he was able to bring anybody home on this. I think that his base probably loved every second of it, but I don't see an undecided voter out there who said, after seeing this tonight, oh, you know what, I'm going to come back to Donald Trump now.
Okay, so look, I also want to make an important distinction for the audience. There's a difference between us evaluating how they did as a performance to win over voters or not, and that's important politics. Then there's a second thing, which is policy, and who was right and who was wrong and who's telling the truth or not. So later in the program, I'm going to tell you just a couple of things that Trump got right, but everything else ranged from little lies to gargantuan lies. Like 30 to 40% of mail-in votes are fraudulent already. What? That is preposterous. It's not within the universe of truth. And so if you're looking at it from the substance point of view, that is super clear. And I'd be shocked if we didn't all agree. No, of course, Biden is largely telling the truth. And that one's not close. That's absolutely clear. And then, and by the way, if you miss any portion of this coverage, if you're a member, you can get all of our coverage, tyt.com/join. And if you're watching on YouTube, you hit the join button below. Speaking of which, I want to let 2 of our members weigh in here. J.M. Frazier said, what a dumpster fire this was. Trump is like a child. And August probably described it perfectly, saying, my post-debate thoughts. So I think that's what a lot of America was thinking. And then, and now I want to go to John and get your thoughts on what you thought happened.
I think this is probably what it feels like in some way in any, great power that falls. I mean, people were tweeting that this is what it must have felt like in the last years of the Soviet Union. Like, this is a demonstration, if we need another one, of the fact that America is fundamentally a broken democracy. It's a failed state. It's a democracy in some ways, kind of, but it has failed. And Trump, like, I've always I've watched the people sort of battle back and forth over the past few years over whether Trump is the problem or just a symptom of the problems, and I've always thought that both those people are wrong. He's clearly both. He is a problem, but you don't get to this point without a failure of many other individuals and organizations. And that spectacle that we were all forced to sit through, the first of three, was an embarrassment. It was horrifying for some of the reasons that you said. I mean, the fact that he told his voters to go and intimidate voters. He said that the Proud Boys should stand down, but somebody's got to do something about Antifa. And he said, with the mail-in ballots, he won't go along with it. Every horrifying, authoritarian thing that he could have said, he did say. And the whole time I just sat there thinking Biden is doing his best, I guess. He did have a couple of good lines. I liked when he reassured people that it is the vote that determines who wins, and not, as Chris Wallace kept asking Donald Trump, what are you going to do about it? No, it's not up to Trump. He's not the king. And so Biden had some good lines, but I'm not going to focus on this, but the whole time I and probably a lot of other people were thinking, what if it was Bernie Sanders that was standing on the debate stage debating him right then? I think it would have been a very different thing. Biden was doing his best, but in the face of that sheer insanity, it wasn't really good enough. It just wasn't. And so I'm extremely worried about what the next period is going to be like. Literally everything Trump could have said to scare me about the future of American democracy he did, up to and including, by the way, that he once again confirmed that no matter what the science shows, he's going to say that a vaccine is available the week before the election. Just, mark that on your calendar. Doesn't matter if it's available or if anybody will be able to have it. He's 100% going to say that it's available. He was very clear that he's expecting the Supreme Court to step in and stop the mail-in ballot counting. Every part of this, the whole thing has been spoiled. We already know the entire plot of this movie. Now we just have to sit through it and hope that all of the people who either the law or norms have given some role in influencing the outcome will do what's necessary to stop Donald Trump from stealing this thing.
Okay, so look, one of the things that I'm worried about with Joe Biden is that Trump accidentally did something right. He got Biden to disown big portions of the left. He got him to defend police in this country. He got him to say he's against the Green New Deal. He further hardened his position against Medicare for all. But really what Trump was doing was he was attacking him as if he's Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. So he attacked him as a socialist and all the different talking points he had ready for Bernie. And then he had the problematic things that Joe Biden has said in the past, like super predators. So when the pundits said, oh, if you nominate Biden, then Trump and the Republicans won't be able to call them socialists. It's not true. He called them a socialist all night long. And so I wish that Biden had a better answer for that. I want to give a dissenting point of view here from one of our members, because we really do this show together. Jessica wrote in, I'm surprised really how much you're attacking Biden. Biden looked calm, intelligent, and decent. Trump looked like a kindergarten bully. I'm not a huge Biden fan, but I thought he did very well. Jessica.
I know, but Jessica, we're a country of bullies. We're a country of bullies. We're a country of bullies. The electorate is full of bullies. Let's just keep it real. So when Trump comes after him aggressively like that and Biden doesn't have an answer, when Trump says, okay, which whatever police group has endorsed you or supports you, and Biden is like fumbling and mumbling, that hurts him. It just does. It's just the truth.
No,
anyway,
I hear you, Anna, but look, we're going to find out who this country is and what this country is in about a month.
I think we know.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't know this country.
Wait, actually, Cenk, really fast.
You know.
I will say,
I don't.
With all that I just said about the state of American democracy and everything, I don't necessarily think that this debate is going to really hurt Joe Biden. That's not what my response is about. I think Joe Biden did basically what he wanted to do. He looked responsible and, adult, he looked at all of that. And I think that seems to have had a pretty good effect for him so far in the election. But I don't think that this is going to fundamentally change the polls. But again, the polls aren't necessarily what's going to determine, the final outcome, which is why I'm focusing on those other things.
No, look, guys, Donald Trump assumes that the country is deeply racist, that if he disowns white supremacists, that he'll lose the election. I don't agree. I don't think I think that there's far too many racists in the country. Of course, we pointed out, we battle against that every day. But do I think 51% of this country is deeply racist and white supremacist and cheers Donald Trump on? No, I don't think that. I think this country is better than that, and I have polling to prove it. But there's only one thing that's going to prove it definitively, and that's November 3rd. We're going to find out what America is. And I don't think they're going to go in Trump's direction. And I am encouraged by Jessica's reaction, because to me the most important thing is people who are not big fans of Biden and who are undecided about Trump or Biden. They're the most important folks who watch this debate. And if they came away thinking, or a significant enough percentage of them came away thinking Biden looked like a professional and Trump looked like a bully and a child, well, that's good news. And I hope that Jessica is right about that. And I think there's a good chance she is.
We do have the first poll. CBS News poll.
Can we get? Can we
oh,
guess?
Sure. I think that would be great. Who do you think won, and by what rough margin?
My guess is they're going to say that Joe Biden won by 5 points, 6 points, 6 points.
What do we all think?
I think it's going to say that Biden won big.
Big is more than 10?
No idea.
More than 10.
And Anna, you just can't, you don't know. It could go either way.
I just want to know what the poll says.
Well,
yeah,
Anna,
I just want to give Michael the win because this has Biden at 48%, Trump at 41%, CBS News poll. So 7 points for Biden, which is basically the national poll difference.
Okay. No, yeah, that's right. So, Michael, that's why we call him Epic Politics Man. nice
you
job.
Did say big, by the way. I was one off and you said big. So I think that's pretty big when you consider how divided the country is, actually. So
yeah. And I think the reason I guess that Biden won big, even though I told you right in the beginning that you could argue that it was a tie, is because I think the analysis that we have heard our whole lives, that being rude does hurt someone. And Trump was nuclear level rude. I mean, we've literally never seen anything like that in a debate. And it turns out that, thank God, a majority of Americans, or at least a plurality of Americans, were turned off by it. So, look, we got to take a break here. And we're going to get Michael back when he comes for the post game. That's just for the members. We're going to do a little extra analysis for that a little bit later, about an hour from now. And you can get all of our coverage by being a member, tyt.com/join, or on YouTube. It's so easy. You just click the join button below the video. And guys, don't forget tyt.com/go, so we can give you this extraordinary coverage, send Michael to the debates, have all of our hosts in, and give you a very honest analysis that you're not going to get anywhere else. In fact, when we come back, I also want to talk about what Bernie Sanders and the rest of the Democratic field did wrong in the primaries, which I think hurt Biden in this debate. So we'll be right back.
When somebody's the president of the United States, the authority is total, and that's the way it's got to be.
2020 is everything. Everything will be decided in 2020, and then we'll either have pessimism a long time, or we'll have optimism.
There is some good news when it comes to elections throughout the country, especially for progressives.
He's struggling in polls. He's trailing Joe Biden in many of these battleground states. And he knows that if he makes it difficult for voters to cast their ballots, especially as we're dealing with this pandemic, well, maybe it'll give him an edge over Biden.
We need to get rid of these people who are in office, who enable these systems that continue to oppress us. Start using your votes and your dollars for the people who want to preserve your community and your humanity.
Defiance is what you need in order to fight for what you know is right. The fight never ends.
Progressive candidates come on this show, we help them, and they've at least got a fighter's chance.
Expand the squad.
Here we go, Squad 2.0. Cory Bush, Jamal Bowman.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
This time, it's real. If he wins another term, God knows what he'll do to our government, our democracy, and our way of life.
We need solidarity, and it begins with you.
Who's gonna fix it? Who's gonna fix it? Goddamn right.
Hello there. Gentle reminder from Yes, I'm Sarah Jones show that the presidential election is less than 3 months from today.
And actually, a certain predator-in-chief has spent more time than that on the golf course.
Yeah, but now that we have, like, Kamala Harris, let's just say some people seem to be having, like, a full-on Kenurism right now, which is like an aneurysm, but like if you're a racist white Ken. Look, I'm not trying to name any names or call anybody out of their name. I just want to say that as black and brown voters, I know people are trying to suppress our voices right now. And do not forget, Kamala Harris, she's not only black, she's also Indian. So something for everybody. First woman of color. Look, I don't care how you vote. I'm just saying make sure you register and keep checking that. You know what I'm saying? Just like they check your temperature when it's, you know, corona, whatever, keep checking your registration temperature. For real. Make sure you vote. Vote.org.
You want to know how you could save money and save the planet? Hello, I got an awesome option for you guys. Aspiration.com/TYT. You plant not 1, not 5, 10 trees when you sign up. You know what trees do? Not a big deal, but one large tree can provide a day's supply of oxygen for up to 4 people. That's 40 people's oxygen just by signing up at aspiration.com/TYT. Sign up for a free spend and save account right now at aspiration.com/TYT.
TYT just crossed 14 billion views. Yes, that's the world population, almost times 2. And we have over 19 million subscribers. Too strong. I love you guys. Look, we're not backed by billionaires like other mainstream media outlets or the right-wing outlets that are almost all backed by them. We're able to press on and continue our coverage because of you guys. Your small dollar donations to our fundraising campaign at tyt.com/go have a huge impact. And you know what they do? They create real change. Contributions of any amount supports our ability to continue to tell stories that often don't get covered by the likes of MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News. With your support, we're the 4th news network, and you know we keep it real. No matter how large or small the contribution, you help us beat the billionaires and all the other media outlets by going to tyt.com/go.
All right, back on the Young Turks selection coverage. Cenk, Anna, and John with you guys. Let me go to you all first. On YouTube Super Chat, Sean Conley says, just fun one to start with. Can we please see TYT hosts throughout the future debates? Their reactions were priceless, plus John eating popcorn had me rolling.
Can I just say I didn't know I was on camera while I was doing that?
Well, that's even better. We will do that. In fact, the reason we put ourselves up at the end, near the end of the debate, was because you guys asked for it. And so we saw that and hence reacted and put ourselves back up. And yes, you would have seen a lot of head shaking throughout. Okay. And we'll do that going forward. Who's bothering me, writes in on YouTube Super Chat. Anna is absolutely right. America was never what they claimed to be, but I already knew that as my ancestors were only 3/5 human. And so, of course, we agree with you. The question is, where are we today in America? And it's not to say that there aren't races left in America. Donald Trump's president. Of course there are. There's lots of them. But to think that the whole country is racist and they're all going to vote for Trump is not remotely true. And the polling doesn't come anywhere near that. So we're going to find out on November 3rd.
Okay, but let me clarify my statements. I'm not saying the entire country is racist and awful. I'm saying that a pretty sizable portion of the country is. Pretty sizable portion of the country thinks it's totally okay for armed right-wing gang members to show up to peaceful protests and gun them down in cold blood. A sizable portion of the country thinks it's totally fine to perform hysterectomies on immigrant women in these detention centers without their consent or permission, which means that they're never allowed to have children, never physically able to have children again. Sizable portion of this country thinks it's totally fine for immigrant children to die in their own vomit on the floor of these detention centers. They think it's totally okay. Sizable portion of this country thinks it's totally fine that more than 200,000 Americans are dead. Sizable portion of this country thinks it's okay for police to perform extrajudicial killings on our streets. This is America. This is America. And it's a pretty devastating realization to come to when you're fed nonstop lies about how wonderful and patriotic and incredible we are and how we spread democracy around the world. No, we overthrow democratically elected leftist leaders all over the world. We just did it in Bolivia. We're going to do it in more countries, I have no doubt. We engage in endless wars. This country is a disaster. And it's because of that sizable chunk of voters who, yes, are ignorant, who, yes, are hateful, and they can't get enough of people like Donald Trump. They can't get enough of that bully, and they've been fed all these lies about how incredible he's been with the economy as they're struggling right now with no work, no health insurance, and we have Joe Biden who's still campaigning and debating as if he's in like the 1980s or 1990s. Wakey. Okay, wakey. You're dealing with a target-rich environment right now, and you're sitting there talking about like, oh, Trump is not being presidential. Of course he's not being presidential. Wake up, get over that fact, and hit him where it hurts. Get him in the jugular. But he doesn't have that ability. So that's where I'm coming from.
But Anna, look, so what you're going to get on this show that you're not going to get anywhere else is us being honest with you guys. So 1/3 of the country is definitely what Anna described. It could be a higher number. Apparently, it's definitely not a lower number. And so no one on TV will tell you that. No one in the mainstream media will tell you that because they don't want to turn off Republican viewers and readers. Well, then you're not doing news. You're doing, marketing for the brands that advertise with you, right? You don't want to piss off Walmart and defense contractors and bankers by telling people, yeah, 1/3 of the country is monsters. They have no problem with the kids in cages. They had no problems with Trump saying that there are very fine people on the Nazi side, and telling the Proud Boys to stand by, and all the things that Anna mentioned. That is absolutely true. But I don't think it's 51%. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. It clearly exists. We talk about it every single day. But if it's 51%, we're going to find out we're going to lose. And it turns out America was excited about fascism. And then it turns out that's what the country was. But I don't think that's where we are today. And so we'll find out. Dana Kramer says, I never thought I would feel sorry for Chris Wallace. Funny point, but I actually want to come back to Chris Wallace and maybe debate how he moderated in a little bit as well. And then Matt H., all of these folks are using YouTube Super Chat, which helps the show and allows us to interact with you. But also, we read member comments from our website at tyt.com/join. You become a member there, and then we read your member comments more often. Anyway, Matt H. says, one can only imagine how much better Bernie would have done than feeble, corrupt Joe Biden. Okay, so, and obviously that's harsh, but let's talk about that. So I think that Bernie Sanders and the rest of the Democratic field did Joe Biden and the entire Democratic Party a giant disservice by not being much, much tougher on Joe Biden during the debates in the primaries. So they played patty cakes with him. They never challenged him on any of these things. And then he walks into a presidential debate with Trump, and Trump fires a howitzer at him. Now, look, I think that it was probably counterproductive, and the howitzer boomeranged on Trump. But Biden seemed shook because, and Anna made this point earlier in the coverage. She said that Biden was like, "Well, you don't look presidential." Of course, Trump's not going to look presidential. I mean, what world are you living in? What time warp are you living in? This isn't the 1980s or 90s. He's not going to come in and try to look gentlemanly. And it's because Joe Biden has never been challenged. He's never been challenged in any of these debates. He didn't get challenged in the primaries, and he never got challenged by the media. So when Trump brought up that super predators line, it was new because not a single soul in the Democratic Party brought it up before. Whereas if we had already hashed that out in the primaries, even if Joe Biden had won, then he is inoculated to it and he's better prepared to it. And I include Bernie Sanders in the criticism because Bernie Sanders, honestly, with Joe Biden, had a target-rich environment, especially coming from the left as Bernie was. And he let him go. He didn't challenge him on Social Security. He didn't challenge him on the crime bill. Trump challenged him on the crime bill. He didn't challenge him nearly enough on the wars, and I can go on and on and on. That's part of why Biden comes in as, in all of our opinions, as a soft debater. Yes, Trump is way too harsh and lost the crowd doing that, but Biden is too soft, can't play effective defense, had almost no offense, because the media yells at every Democrat to never criticize establishment Democrats during primaries. So you know what it does? It hurts the party. It makes us unprepared to go into battle in the general election. The Republicans did something completely different in 2016, and guess who won the election? They had a bloody, crazy battle in the primaries in 2016. Nobody stopped them, and the guy who emerged victorious from that won the general election. So when you hear pundits or Democratic consultants or more importantly, Democratic Party leaders telling you, do not ever criticize anyone in the Democratic Party, they're lying to you and they're hurting the cause of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and I would add just a little bit. I know that, again, we're going to keep it real. We obviously want Donald Trump to lose in a landslide. We want Biden to beat him, but we're also not going to pretend that Biden is absolutely great, smells like cinnamon buns and all of that. It looks like he might have won. He might have squeaked out a 7-point win, give or take, against the guy that not only has, I mean, how many stories have we told you? You know all of his issues, but also 200,000 dead, economic collapse, all of that. It was still that close. And right now on CNN and MSNBC and all those channels, they're having this back and forth about how crazy it was and how Donald Trump was so unfair and all of that. And some of them, maybe the vast majority of them probably support Joe Biden. Some of them are saying, well, he could have been a little bit stronger. But what they're not saying is how utterly disappointed they are that there wasn't someone stronger to rebut the insanity coming from Donald Trump. And most of them worked to achieve this. This is what they wanted. They wanted it to be Joe Biden. They certainly didn't want it to be Bernie Sanders. That debate could have been so different. Doesn't mean Donald Trump would have suddenly started acting like an adult or like a sane person or anything like that. But the response would have been so much stronger. It would have been better calibrated for the 2020 that we're in. And they could have ended tonight feeling so confident about the next couple of weeks. But we're not going to have that. Okay? Not because of what we did. That's the outcome we wanted. But they wanted this with their brown shirts and all of that. The smears against Bernie Sanders. And I get it. It is Joe Biden. And I want Joe Biden to win. I want everyone to vote for Joe Biden. But they're going to be like losing it a little bit on camera, but definitely off camera when this is what they spent months and months trying to work for.
I'll tell you one more thing before Anna jumps in. And Anna made this point earlier, and I'll let her elaborate on it. But there was 1,000 things Joe Biden could have said about what a train wreck Trump has been in the last 4 years. And he said about 4 of them. My God, it's not just that he's too genteel. You also got to prepare better. I mean, we had all the answers.
100%.
We're screaming them here in the studio when Trump says absurd things. Hit him back with this. I mean, you know he's going to attack you on Hunter Biden, your son. You know that as a certainty. Why didn't you have it prepared to say, here's what Ivanka did, here's what Don Jr. did, the New York Times just talked about how you funneled money to Ivanka in a scheme that appears to be tax evasion, and you both might be facing arrest. You want to talk about corruption? But Biden and the Democratic establishment, they don't do that. They're too soft.
Yep.
They're not used to.
No, you're 100% right. No, Cenk, the second Trump utters the words law and order, I'd be like, oh, law and order? You mean the law and order that forced you to pay a $25 million settlement for defrauding students with Trump University? Is that the law and order you're referring to? Oh, law and order? You mean the law and order that forced you to dismantle your charitable foundation because you were literally using it to enrich yourself? Is that the law and order you're referring to? At one point, Trump mentioned poll watchers. We all know what poll watchers are. There's a consent decree that just expired, And that consent decree prevented Republicans from sending armed law enforcement or armed guards to in-person polling locations meant to intimidate voters. That expired, and now what is the Trump campaign doing? They just hired 50,000 so-called poll watchers, armed individuals to show up at in-person voting locations to intimidate people who are trying to practice their constitutionally protected right in participating in this democratic process. Did Biden respond to that in any way? He didn't. He just let Trump talk about the beautiful poll watchers. There's going to be beautiful poll watchers. Wake up. Wake up. If you're not on stimulants, take them. Take them immediately. Wake up and fight back. I don't know what that performance was. The more I think about it, the more disappointing it is. Because again, this is not a typical presidential debate. It's just not. Okay, and I'm not only talking about the bullying tactics by Donald Trump. I'm specifically talking about how unique this situation is, where an incumbent president is a complete and utter disaster. But by every single measure, how do you not attack him more aggressively? How do you not make the case to the American people that this man has failed in everything from the economy to the coronavirus response to the civil unrest to the division in this country? I mean, every single issue. Yeah. I mean, the fact that farmers in the middle of the country have committed suicide because Trump's ridiculous trade war destroyed their income, just completely destroyed their income. Those are things that he should have brought up, but he didn't.
Yeah. So, look, I don't know if my style and debating style and Anna's as well is the right way to go.
It is.
First poll out from CBS says Biden won 48-41. And it's entirely possible, and in fact likely, that since Trump is so horrific, Biden is going to basically coast to a victory. But at some point, you're going to pay a price. In fact, I know what that point was. It was 2016. When you're constantly too soft and you never present your case and you let the other side steamroll you, it has consequences. We lost in 2016 because of that, and I'm afraid we might lose further elections if we keep going with this style. So let me give you more examples of what Biden could have done if he was stronger and knew how to make his case assertively. So Trump's style, and I can't believe that they can't see this, is to constantly put you on the defense. But he's a child and he's thin-skinned. So it's actually super easy to counteract that by putting him on the defense. So how do you do it? Trump brings up grades and, you didn't do well in college. Oh my God, that's manna from heaven. So here's what you do. If I was debating Trump, I'd say, wait. Did you just bring up grades? Oh, thank you so much. Because, look, I didn't want to seem crass by calling you stupid. But the reality is you're hiding your grades, not just from college, but from high school. That's incredibly embarrassing. So obviously you must have finished dead last in high school, dead last in college. And it's obvious because your dad got you into those schools because you're a spoiled little brat. But hey, Donnie, because at this point he's interrupting, right? Donnie, no problem. Just release your grades. Then we'll know whether you're stupid or smart. You keep saying you finished really high in your grades, so you should be proud in your class. You said you were number 1 at Wharton. So release your grades. You're not going to release your grades, and I guarantee you know why? Because you were the dumbest person who went there. Now, at the end of the debate, what happens? We're having a conversation about, is Trump the dumbest person that ever went to Penn, the dumbest person who ever went to his high school, or the second dumbest? See, and once you put him on the defense, Trump can't help himself. All debate long, he'll go back to how he's a dummy, but not quite as dumb, right? So, but the Democrats don't have it in them. That's why they drive us crazy. But you could do it. Look, if you say, hey, Cenk, that's a minor issue. No. First of all, politically, it's his main strength is strength. I am strong. I am competent. I am a good businessman. If you undercut him by humiliating him, and making everyone realize he's hiding his high school grades. How pathetic. You undercut his political strength. But if you want to do it on policy issues, as Anna pointed out, there's a million policy issues. Look, you could point out, and Biden didn't do this. This is unbelievable. We have more coronavirus cases and more deaths than anyone in the world. You've taken us from first to worst. We're literally worse than all the third world countries because of you. You got 200,000 people killed. And then he'll make excuses. Oh, no, but it was the governors. It was this. And then you say, hey, Donnie, are you ever going to grow up and man up and take responsibility for anything, you coward? If you can't lead, step aside. I'll do it. But there is no Democrat, there is no, certainly not Biden, who could ever do that. And that is why Republicans win way more elections than they ever should, based on the ideological principles and the demographics of this country.
Can I add one extra thing? And again, it's not to say that Joe Biden is definitely going to lose the debate, but again, it shouldn't even be in question. I mean, regardless of how horrible Trump is and how obviously horrible he is, you are running, as we have pointed out multiple times, against the guy with the worst record in American presidential history. So you're definitely going to win. That's not the question, but by how much? The other area that I don't think we've specifically criticized Biden in is Donald Trump is, if anything, incredibly predictable. He has like 5 lines, 5 stories that he repeats over and over. He has a limited number of lies that he tells over and over. And I don't know if there was one good example where Joe Biden had clearly known a line that Trump was going to say and had the perfect response to it. And it's not tough. Trump is going to say, sure, 200,000 people died, but 2 million could have, literally citing the numbers for what might have happened if nothing had been done whatsoever, but he didn't have a response to it. The fact that Trump was obviously going to mention Hunter Biden, and the best that Biden had in response was, that's not true. That's been debunked. That's not true. How could that be your best response? It's been 8 months since the impeachment over the whole Hunter Biden plan that he had. Nobody has been more forewarned of what is going to happen in a debate than Joe Biden, and he gave no indication that he had actually specifically prepared for what Donald Trump was going to bring. It was a huge wasted opportunity.
All right, guys, believe it or not, we got to take another break. But when we come back, there's so much more. There's one more golden opportunity that Biden had that he totally blew. But I also want to tell you his best line. And then I want to talk about how Trump got Biden to disown the left and what the ramifications, the consequences of that could be. And I made a prediction during the debate on Twitter because we didn't want to interrupt the debate. And we have an answer on whether that came true or not. So there's so much more left to go. You guys make this entire show and this coverage possible by supporting the show at tyt.com/go. We literally cannot do it without you, but with you, we're strong. We get this progressive message out. And as you can tell from any of this coverage, you're never going to get this on cable news. There's no way in the world on MSNBC or CNN they're going to be talking about all the things Biden should have said forcefully and how the Democrats are too weak to say it. So, and we're not doing it to bash the Democrats. We're doing it so they can, look, in the words that I use against Trump in a second, so they can man up and actually beat Republicans and beat them forcefully and easily. So we'll talk about all that and much more. And if you miss any part of this coverage, if you're a member, you can get all of it, including the post game we're going to do later, by going to tyt.com/join or hitting the join button below if you're watching on YouTube. We'll be right back.
I'm Dr. Lena Hamilton, poet and educator out of Atlanta, Georgia. I've been thinking there'll be a time years from now when we'll ask each other, what did you do? And we won't be asking, was it climate change you were worried about, voter suppression, access to child and health care, elder care even. We'll be wondering which of us did our job and registered to vote. If you're unsure of your status, it's as easy as checking at vote.gov. And for the rest of you, I'll see you at the polls.
By passing voter ID laws, closing polling stations, purging voter rolls, and now even undermining the U.S. Postal Service, Republicans are doing everything in their power to restrict your right to vote. Well, look, we're going to fight back. We're going to talk about it on air. I'm going to constantly remind people to vote. And another thing we came up with is, well, let's put it on our bodies and tell people to vote. So how are we going to do that? You got a hat here that says vote. You got masks that say election is coming. You've got a shirt that says legalized voting. Check it all out at shoptyt.com. Guys, we got to remind people not only to vote, but they've got to remember that our right to vote is sacred and that democracy is worth defending. We've only got 2 months left here. Let's go remind everyone voting is the most important thing you can do. Voting is a critical part of the democratic process, and right now it's under attack in this country. There are currently very powerful forces looking to undermine your right to vote, especially for the poor and minority voters. If for no other reason than that, we have got to push back against that and register to vote. Make sure that your voice is heard, that they are not allowed to suppress the vote. We fight back, and when we do, we win together. Register and have your voice heard in November.
What Cenk and a few other people are trying to do is give us a different perspective on reality, the reality facing the middle class and working people, not just the billionaire class.
We're here to press on and carry on the work that we've been doing that's so important.
We've begun to turn the press a little bit. 2 years ago, they would have never covered Booker. 2 years ago, they would have never covered Bowman.
You know, this is where it started in a lot of ways.
Why is TYT the leader of the progressive media? Because we try to unite people. We give other people a platform. We help other progressive shows. We introduce people to progressives they've never heard of. We help progressive candidates, and sometimes they even win.
Cori Bush has won in Missouri. Down goes Lacey Clay. Cori Bush is the best of us.
You gave me a platform. People from this district heard about Justice Democrats by watching your show and nominated me to JD.
There is no more safe incumbent seats in the House. Bye-bye, establishment.
We're going to push Biden as far as we can.
After they win, we'll probably fight them tooth and nail.
We need to have independent media overcome mainstream media.
The DNC was so stupid to deny you guys press credentials.
We need fighters, and we need to stick together.
So this is what democracy looks like.
There is a ton of hope right now. More hope than we have ever had in this country.
So it's up to you guys, it's up to all of us to execute this in the next 5 years. You know what that means? That means the future is ours.
It is wrong to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country.
Look, I tell you guys, most important thing is voting in primaries. Primaries.
I hope every American will vote for the candidate and party of his choice, but vote.
We cannot continue to complain about corruption and complain about what's happening in this country and continue to vote for it.
Let's get it right this time. It could be a moment of redemption for what happened in 2016.
On the Young Turks coverage of the first presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. The folks at shoptyt.com are amazing. They already have a shirt that says, "Will you shut up, man?" That's a line that Joe Biden had in the debate. And if you use the code BUHBYE, that's BUHBYE, you actually get 15% off of any activist apparel. So resist, vote. There's a ton of voting shirts, anti-Trump shirts, and we got a lot of anti-Trump shirts. So go to shoptyt.com. I love that they were that quick with the shirt. So check that out. By the way, twostrongcoffee.com/TYT. It gives to progressive causes. If you buy 2 or more bags, it helps Just Democrats, Rebellion PAC, Wolf PAC, and TYT. And it's organic, it's fair trade. So check that out. twostrongcoffee.com/TYT. So and now you guys have an awesome number of comments. We've got to get to so many things. A bucket of pearl clutching squirrels said, "Cenk, this is about my prediction." So I said in the middle of the debate, even though Trump is the biggest bully I've ever seen in any debate, he makes me look like a wilting flower. If you saw my debate in my congressional race, I was not a wilting flower. I came in very aggressive. But Trump was so over the top, it was ridiculous. But I said, nonetheless, my prediction is the Republicans will come out and go, can you believe Joe Biden said shut up? He was so rude in this debate. Because they have no shame. They have no sense of hypocrisy. They don't care. And a bucket of pearl clutching squirrels are one of our members says, Cenk, the right is already pearl clutching about Biden telling Trump to shut up. Of course.
I can't emphasize enough how little the Democratic Party should care about what right-wing smear merchants have to say. Right? Like, just be strong and just, you guys, Trump is a target-rich environment. I don't care what his goons have to say about Biden's rhetoric or anything he had to say about Trump being too mean. Are you kidding me? You know what I would, as soon as Trump goons start accusing me of being rude or mean or uncivil, whatever, during the debate, I just start making fun of them. Oh, did I hurt Trump's feelings? Did I hurt your feelings? Oh, do you need a safe space? Oh, make fun of them because they should be made fun of. Period.
Yeah.
Laugh at them. Like the fact that Biden has allowed right-wingers to push him to the right and make right-wing talking points. You know what they agreed on? The one thing they agreed on during that whole debate? How the police should be funded more.
Yep.
What are you doing, Biden? Yeah, it's pathetic. It's pathetic.
No, you're 1,000,000,000% right, because everyone in Washington teaches civility almost as a religion, and there's a reason why they do that. Because if you're in favor of the status quo, as they all are, well, civility is perfect. You'll never get rid of the status quo if everyone is civil and polite and never goes to actually do change. So it's become a religion for them. So they're like, oh, if Trump yells at you or the Republicans lie about you, just say, that's unfair, and then shrink away. No, you fight back in all the ways that Anna described, I described earlier. I guarantee you that the folks on cable news are tut-tutting Trump now, but probably barely saying anything negative about Biden, who had 1,000 opportunities to hit back, and I wish he had. John, I don't know if you've got updates on that, so I'm curious if you saw the media reactions or panels on cable.
Okay, so yeah. Oh man, there's a lot to talk about. Also, as Marissa, the producer, pointed out, kudos to Shop TYT for getting that shirt up so fast. TDR has been waiting 2 years. Anyway.
Damn, calling him out live on air. That's what I'd like to see with Biden.
We've only been around for 2 years, 2 whole years. Anyway, we haven't gotten one. Anyway, okay, so in terms of reaction, let's see. I've got Sean Hannity. You know, he's a newsman. So he hailed gladiator, warrior, fighter Trump. All three of those things. He's not one of those things. He's a gladiator, warrior, fighter. Taunted cranky Biden, saying maybe it's past his bedtime, he needs his nap. Because all of them have to pretend that what Trump did is totally, no, that makes sense. That's what you want in charge. You want that guy to have the nuclear codes. They've had their tongue on the boot so long they can't even taste the leather anymore. That's just what reality tastes like. And so that's what they're saying. Now, a more interesting and perhaps more important response was from some of the undecided voters in Frank Luntz's focus group. So he asked them to give positive and negative reactions to the two candidates. For Trump, some of the words that were provided were arrogant, un-American, and I swear to God, crackhead. So for Biden, they list better than expected, which, yeah, they've been spending 6 months implying that Joe Biden's brains are cheese. No, Biden's old. He's a bit slow. It's really frustrating, but he hasn't lost his mind like the crackhead has. Anyway, more professional, restraint and compassion, predictable, coherent leader. The negative ones for Biden were things like predictable, politician, evasive, things like that. But for Trump, they were literally things like a-hole, crackhead, and things like that. And someone said there was a follow-up question. One of them, it was, aren't those serious accusations? And the undecided voter said, well, if the shoe fits, the clown shoe.
Yeah. No, John, that's really important because look, we can't lose sight like the mainstream media does of the fact that we all have our own perspective and we're all in our own bubbles. So from a progressive perspective, we always want Democrats to fight harder and we always want them to make their point aggressively about why the Republicans are wrong because we're so frustrated. For 40 years, Democrats have sat on their hands. But that focus group confirms what we said at the beginning of the coverage, which is no, for real Americans, they're not used to this level of nuclear clown show that Donald Trump puts on. And we cover it exhaustively every day. So we knew what Trump was going to do. We knew what Trump was going to do, apparently way better than Biden did. But remember, a lot of people watching a presidential debate do not see everything that Trump does. They might see the big ones, the huge gaffes like injecting bleach into you, and they might see the taxes story, but they're really not, they probably don't even know the details of the taxes story. So I'll tell you who lost the debate. The guy who was considered a crackhead by enough people for that word to stand out in a focus group. Holy cow. I've never seen that. So Biden, I think, had a super low bar. You just got to prove that your brain, as John put it, your brain is not cheese, and then let the maniac be the crackhead that he is. So hence, there's no question, Frank Luntz is the top Republican pollster. Given that, given the CBS poll, given our reaction, there's no question Biden won, but it was almost a win by default, which is, by the way, Democratic Party 101. Let the Republicans be monsters and cross your fingers and hope that the American people can see it without us making our case. So
we do have one other poll result. It's from the CBS News, but it's a different sort of response to give us a little bit more of an idea potentially of how people are interpreting what we just saw. This is apparently from battleground states. That's what they're saying, at least. They don't define that any better than that. But asked, based on this debate, what it made you think of the different candidates. The percentage that it made them think better of the candidate, for Joe Biden, it was 38%. For Donald Trump, it was 24%. Worse of him was 32% for Joe Biden, 42% for Donald Trump, and no change was 30% for Biden, 34% for Trump. So in terms of affecting their overall impression of the candidates, it's swinging in a bad direction for Donald Trump there, obviously.
Yes. Look, another mistake by Biden, which goes along the lines of what we were just talking about in him not being aggressive enough, is New York Times drops this nuclear level report on how Trump did tax evasion and is broke. They spent 1 minute on it. Now, if you're Biden, it doesn't matter if the Trump played so much offense that he tried to overwhelm you. It doesn't matter what the moderator asked. You keep coming back to it if you think that's a winning issue for you. So how could you corner Trump on that and make him be defensive? Easy. You go, look, New York Times says that you deducted gigantic losses. So there's one of two possibilities. One is that you did tax evasion. You really are a billionaire as you claim, but you choose not to pay taxes because you're doing tax evasion. Or you're actually broke. So which one is it? And I'm a billionaire, but I don't pay taxes because I'm smart, right? No, there is no billionaire that doesn't get to pay taxes because they're smart. That's called tax evasion. So are you admitting to tax evasion? No, I'm not going to do that. Oh, no. Okay, then so you're saying you did lose all that money. My God, how did you lose $400 million twice, 2 different times? Are you the worst businessman in American history? You changed the framing completely from smart. Trump's only advantage, the only thing that he scores better in polling than Biden on, is the economy, partly based on his image from back in the Apprentice days, when the head of CNN, who at the time was the head of NBC, Jeff Zucker, built him up to something he wasn't. NBC knew he was dead broke, and he played a rich man on TV. So hit him with that. Nothing, zero on that from Biden tonight. So it's hard not to get frustrated with that. So at the end of the day, Biden winds up with a default victory, but we're taking chances with the Republic. The next time we go up against a Republican, we've got to have someone who can actually fight back.
I just want to know, look, debating, yes, part of it is about substance, but a lot of it is about strategy and really figuring out what your opponent's Achilles heel is. If you guys roll the tape and look at the expression on Donald Trump's face every time Biden meekly mentions the economy, you'll see where his Achilles heel is. If Biden just focused on that one issue and like really hit hard, I think that, first of all, Trump doesn't know how to respond to it. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed that. Like, every time Biden would even, in a very minor way, mention the state of the economy, I wouldn't look at his face. I would look at Trump's face because I wanted to see how he was reacting to it. He gets super uncomfortable, man, because that's the thing that he's been hinging on, like focusing on in order to make his case for re-election. But we all know that the stock market is not representative of the real economy. We know that the vast majority of ordinary Americans right now are struggling. They were struggling before the pandemic. Again, nearly 50% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency. That's before the pandemic. And now, after the pandemic, the number is much higher. Like, just go after him on that over and over and over again. Watch him squirm, right? And let us enjoy it. But I don't know. I just, look, I'm just going to keep it real. We're dealing with two insanely old white men, okay? And they don't have energy. Neither one of them do. Trump is like hopped up on something. He's like sweaty all over. He's got like sweat dripping down his upper lip. Biden is like falling asleep while he should be like going for the jugular. It's just incredibly disappointing because the future of this country lays in the hands of these two individuals, depending on who wins. And it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And you're right, Cenk, the more I think about it, obviously I've been furious and angry with how the primaries went down. But like the more I think about it, the more frustrating it is that everything was manufactured in the primaries in a way to promote Joe Biden, who, in my opinion, out of that entire field of people running for the Democratic ticket, Biden was the weakest. I mean, we saw it on that stage today.
Yeah.
We do have another poll, if you want an overall
Let's go to the poll, then I want to go to you guys, and then we've got to get to some important topics, including some of the things I promised you, like Biden actually did have one or two good lines, and we've got to talk about the consequences of Biden disowning the left. So, but John, go ahead. What's the poll?
Yeah, and we also have to talk about one other person who was in large part responsible for the mess that we just saw. But John Harwood tweeted, CNN instant poll of debate watchers on who won. They had 60% Biden, 28% Trump.
Oh,
I don't know if that's, I don't know exactly what the methodology on that is, but that was a more dominant win for him than the CBS poll had been.
Okay, so I'm tied with Michael. He's got one that was around 5 points. And I've got one that was much, much bigger for a Biden win, as I thought. All right. So first, let me give shout outs to our awesome Twitch subscribers and viewers. So people who gifted subs, I love the community on Twitch that you guys look out for each other. Deep Space Monk, Bandito Radio, Code Omega, John Moxley's Fringe. They all did it. A. Tralpy with a great line, and thank you for saying. He said, God, I believe in you guys so much. We believe in you too, brother. That's why we do this show together. Jeff Waldorf was a good show of his own around the nation with Jeff Waldorf, gave 300 bits and said, here for the commentary and great chat. And Adam the Mech E resub for the 4th month with Prime. If you have Amazon Prime and you watch us on Twitch, it's free for you guys, but we get the revenue for it, so it's perfect. So please do that and resub every month if you can. He said, I just want to see if Cenk knows what a hype train is. I kind of don't want to find out because it's kind of fun not knowing, but I definitely, sight unseen, would hop on a hype train. And I hope we're on one on Twitch right now. Okay, so I got to give a shout out to Vince Rogers on YouTube Super Chat, who's so generous and just said, great job. Vince, you too, brother. We do this show together. I mean, look, at tyt.com/go, you guys have powered us for the whole year. And let's finish strong on that. We got to get the strong progressive message out. tyt.com/go. And one last one from a member on our website. Cousin Vinny said, Cenk the optimist, Anna the pessimist, and John the realist. These three are literally the perfect trio. Thank you. But he adds, P.S., I'm not saying that Anna being a pessimist is bad. In fact, listening to her takes is often incredibly cathartic when 98% of what we hear everywhere else is just constant gaslighting. By the way, on that, I agree 1,000%. And so thank you for saying that. That's wonderful of you. And like I always say, our members power us. You could do that on the website at tyt.com/join. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you just hit the join button below. And we got a giant post game coming up for you. In that post game, one of the things I want to talk about is what does the future look like? What can progressives do in 2024? Because I got news for you. Our candidate in 2024 ain't going to be Joe Biden. So and even establishment folks believe that. Michael Schur believes that, by the way. Michael Schur is coming back and giving us more reaction from the debate stage in Cleveland when we come back for the postgame that's just members only. But we've got a couple of minutes here. One of the things I wanted to so first, let me give you some of the stuff I promised you. I think Biden's line of get out of the bunker and the sand trap that you're in and go pass a bill on coronavirus so you can help people. Clearly the best line of the night by either candidate. And when I heard it, that was at a moment when Trump was pummeling him and wouldn't allow him to speak. So that was his first flash of fighting back. And I kind of went like this, like, whew, oh, thank God. He finally said something that was powerful and a line that he had prepared and actually delivered well. So I don't want you to think that, we're not fair and that we're not giving you the analysis of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so Biden did have a good point on that. So every once in a while, he would land a blow on Trump. But I'm so curious what's going to happen in the next two debates, because are they going to tell him to go harder on Trump or to point out more of his problems or to prepare better? Or given that the polling indicates that Biden won this debate, are his consultants and his advisors going to say, oh, great, we don't need to do anything. Let's just coast for the next two debates? Maybe. Knowing the Democratic Party, I have a sense of which way that's going. Okay, so I'm worried about it. By the way, we're going to cover all the debates. Don't miss any of the debates right here on the Young Turks, and obviously election night. Either election night is going to be joyous or it's going to be filled with rage. So either way, it's going to be, look, forget the fact that it's an event and it's going to be an amazing show. It's going to be one of the most important nights in American history. That is not hyperbole. It's absolutely real. So don't miss any of that as we do our coverage. Guys, unfortunately, we're out of time here. But for the members, we have so much more. We're going to analyze how Chris Wallace, the moderator, did. I want to talk about how much damage Biden did to the left by constantly agreeing with Trump on right-wing framing. So we got to talk about that. And then the future, what are we going to do in 2024? All that's for the members right now. tyt.com/join or hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube. We'll see you there in 1 minute. All right, back on the Young Turks. Michael Schur joins us again from Cleveland, where we had the first presidential debate. I want to go to him in a second, but first I'm going to go to you guys as usual. Dragonfly makes a good point. This is all in the member section. What hurts most is that the whole world sees this. I didn't think about it that way. That's a great point. God, the rest of the world looks at this and they got to be thinking, man, America's in bad shape. Wow. Well, led by a total clown.
The whole world will see November 4th, too, and that's a chance to say, all right, we got it right.
This time, I hope.
I'm just saying it's a chance to say that. Correct.
Right. Then Annie writes in, Anna, I do agree with you. 2 sweaty old white men, and I'm a grandmother, but I care what my children and grandchildren are inheriting. What a choice. Just hope I live to see a progressive elected. Keep up the good commentary. Thank you, Annie. We appreciate your comment. We appreciate you being a member. And last one here is Grim writes in. I don't know if it's related to Ryan or not, but Grim writes in, oh, wow, I rarely come to this site. Hope I'm not related to Ryan, or not actually Ryan Grim. Anyway, no, but let me read you the rest of it. He says, oh, wow, I rarely come to this site. They have a live chat with TYT homies. What's up, homies? Yes, we have a great live chat, minus the trolls. It's wonderful. Anyway, you're all members, so welcome. So, Michael, you did an interview in Cleveland where we just held the presidential debate. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I should set the scene too. Ordinarily, when we go to these debates, after the debate, there's a spin room. There's availability from both campaigns, or the many campaigns during the primaries, to speak to some of their surrogates, to speak to the candidates themselves. Not the case here because of COVID. But Tim Murtaugh, who is the communications director for the Trump reelect campaign, was over here, and I was able to, although he wasn't excited about answering a question, I was able to follow him to ask him a question that bothered me during the debate. Here's Tim Murtaugh. He's the communications director for Trump.
To articulate a vision for the future, and he kept it. It was a dominating performance. He was in command of the entire situation every moment of the debate, and Joe Biden looked weak, unable to defend his 47 years of failure in Washington, unable to articulate a vision for the future, and he kept on looking around for help from the moderator and, I don't know, somebody in the crowd, anybody who could help him.
And the question about white supremacists and denouncing white supremacists, the president didn't really pounce on that one. Would you have liked that he answered that a little better?
The president has repeatedly denounced white supremacists. Just this past week, he declared the Ku Klux Klan a terrorist organization. The president has been absolutely clear on this. He has the best record for the African American community.
But tonight, sir, he wasn't perfectly clear. Would you in another debate say you should be clearer about that?
There is no ambiguity. The president has denounced repeatedly white supremacy. He declared the KKK a terrorist organization, something that Joe Biden has never done in 47 years in Washington.
Well, Joe, but Tim,
okay, Michael, I love it. Thank you for asking that question. You get in that answer the dichotomy between the professional Republicans who know how to prevaricate better and Donald Trump who doesn't. And they're constantly, basically apologizing for him after the fact. But we all heard it clear as day. Chris Wallace asked him arguably, well, actually not arguably, definitely a softball. Do you denounce white supremacists? It doesn't get any easier than that question. And Trump did not say yes. He kept asking for clarifications and he never said yes. What do you make of that answer, Michael?
I mean, in 2020, it is literally the easiest question that any presidential candidate, for any candidate at any office level in America, student body president, the easiest question to answer, and he didn't answer it when it was posed to him. And again, I don't know why this is problematic for him. And it speaks to the whole idea that he is afraid to drive a wedge with the extreme side of his party. But what he views as the extreme side of the Democratic Party, which is the progressive side, he's trying, and I think it's a terrible tactic, trying to drive a wedge between Democrats by getting Joe Biden to talk about being for the Green New Deal, being for defunding the police, things that Joe Biden, and being for Medicare for all, things that Joe Biden isn't for. And I think that they were all good answers on the part of Biden tonight politically as the nominee for the party to say that he's not for the Green New Deal. But here's the plan I have, and here's what you've done. I'm not for Medicare for all. Here's the plan I have. Here's what you've done. I'm not necessarily going to defund the police. Those are not my words. Here's the plan I have. Here's what you've done. He didn't perfectly articulate any of those plans, but rather than sort of hemming and hawing, he decisively answered those questions. And what we've proven now is that this election won't be won because of the idea that there's a wedge in the Democratic Party, which may have happened in 2016 or may not have. But I just think that Donald Trump sees a fear in his own party, and he's trying to project that onto Joe Biden. I think the answer you heard from Murtaugh there was pretty clear. You're right, Cenk. It shows you that Donald Trump is not a professional politician. The people around him are party apparatchiks still Republicans who are going to equivocate what he said.
Well, oftentimes Trump uses the fact that he's not a professional politician as advantage for him, because people don't like politicians. Of all the questions that Frank Luntz asked in his focus group after the debate, almost all of them were negative for Trump. In fact, the word crackhead stood out, which is amazing, unprecedented as a description of Donald Trump, the current president of the United States.
Right.
But for Biden, the only one that was arguably significantly negative was politician, evasive, right? And so now at the same time, there's a reason why you give at least halfway rational answers and don't go full racist and go white supremacist. Haven't made up my mind yet. I'll get back to you. Right. And so I don't think the country, and we had this debate earlier, but I don't think the country is as racist as Donald Trump thinks it is. I think it's going to backfire on him. He's already got his base. He needs to expand beyond his base, and he's just not doing that. I do disagree with you, Michael, on his inability to drive a wedge between progressives and the rest of the party, because as I'm about to show you, I think he did. It bothered me greatly. It didn't bother me greatly enough that I would ever consider not getting Trump out of office. And the way you do that is to vote for Joe Biden. That's the realistic option right now. But when Biden loudly denounced Green New Deal and Medicare for all and defunding the police, I mean, not just defunding, but he said, I want to add money to the police, basically help the police. None of that made me like him any better. None of them that made me want to support him or get excited about him. And the only thing it did is make me think about who can primary him in 2024.
But let me interrupt you before you play what you're about to play. That's exactly what I'm saying, Cenk. What just happened, this dynamic, none of that did that. And that's why it's fine for Joe Biden to do that, because none of that got you to do that. And there's a wink and a nod with progressives now with Joe Biden to a degree. And it doesn't mean that there's not going to be a primary. It doesn't mean that this is exactly the candidate that they want. But if this is a referendum on Donald Trump, which I think we can all safely say to a great degree this election is, then that doesn't matter. And so you just proved the point I was making, because I don't think that any of those things are going to take people away. But if he does go in that direction, he's proven right now in a primary that those ideas specifically didn't win the primary. They came close and they're very popular within the party, but they didn't win the primary. Doing what he did won the primary. So he's not going to change course now, but I think as president, he's going to learn that he needs to go in a much more progressive direction. I think he is exactly the type of person who will do that, because he's a people pleaser, and that's exactly what he wants to do.
Anna, your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, I just think that if Trump is going to attack Biden from the right, and then Biden's going to respond by giving right-wing answers, it's not going to play well with some portion of the Democratic voters. The only thing Biden really has working for him right now is that Trump is so unbelievably awful that people want him out. And that's where I'm at. That's not a glowing endorsement of Joe Biden. I think the fact that Biden wants to fund police more without having like a comprehensive answer about what needs to be done to reform policing before more funding is funneled to police is an issue. And I'll say this, right? Like, we need to consider the fact that he needs to give people a reason to like go out of their way to vote. And right now, especially with this election, you would need to go out of your way. If you're going to vote in person, especially in a swing state, you're going to deal with armed Trump people who are going to show up to those polls with the very intention of intimidating individuals who want to vote. And so are people going to want to put themselves in that situation in order to cast their ballots for Biden? And so his campaign just needs to be a little more about what he's going to do to improve the lives of people outside of just getting rid of an awful incumbent president like Donald Trump. That's where I'm at with it.
If I could just respond to Anna, I don't disagree with what Anna's saying. I think his presidency has to be about that. I don't think it's necessary for his campaign at this point of the campaign to be about that. It's defined who Joe Biden is, and it's also defined who he isn't. And I think that the Democrats have chosen their horse for this race, and they are banking on sort of outrage and fatigue. And I do think, and I mentioned this maybe earlier here, but I think that if Trump fatigue is a real thing, I know that it's a real thing. I think 2018 proved that it was a real thing. If it's a real thing, then this was, and this is what I tweeted it, that this is peak Trump fatigue. And when you are at peak Trump fatigue, I think you play it carefully. You guys, and I understand the passion behind it, may think that playing it carefully isn't the right thing. I think the presidency has to be about more than that. I think getting there is Joe Biden's job, and I think he's doing it okay.
I'm curious what John thinks, but look, I'll just say real quick. It might work this time because they're up against, as the focus group said, a crackhead. But it didn't work last time. Being really, really careful and cautious and timid got us Trump in the first place.
That was a personality thing, though, Jake. That was also
no.
There were so
the problem, Michael, in the long run is that the Democrats never make their case. In fact, and Biden did it again tonight. Oh, you're right about a Green New Deal being too far left. You're right about Medicare for all. You're right about defunding the police. And in the long term, what that does is it does damage to your brand and people's perception of, are you strong? Do you believe what you stand for? And do you stand for anything? And I think that does more damage in the long run. Yes, but the short run in this particular case is so massively important that we'll all get beyond it for the moment being. But then how much damage does that do in the long run is what I was saying.
And I was only talking about it in the context of tonight's debate. I wasn't talking about it as a blueprint for the future for the party. I think in the context of tonight's debate and the 40 days that are left in this race, I think we're all on the same page here.
John.
Yeah, look, I think in terms of some of the policy, he didn't seem overly eager to delve into his plans. And to be fair to him, I guess, even if that is what he wanted, this was clearly not an environment that was going to make that easy. Trump was obviously talking over him. But one of the things that I think he did that sort of unnecessarily hurt him insofar as his ability for these debates to serve to broaden his appeal to those on the left is, like when he was talking about climate change, a lot of what he had to say was pretty good. He talked about the fact that we're not going to have any more coal-fired power plants and things like that. He went into some of the details there, but then he expressed himself like, no, I don't support the Green New Deal. Why not say, I support the vast majority of the spirit of the Green New Deal? He could pitch it in a better way. I feel like sometimes, maybe because the pressure's on him and Trump is goading him, like he feels like he has to show how little respect he has for this side of the party, when he could be talking about the fact that he had this commission on dealing with the climate crisis. And a good number of people that I trust quite a bit on that came out of it thinking that Joe Biden is probably going to be persuadable on these issues. He could talk about that, but sometimes I feel like, I don't know if it's because he thinks that saying this is going to win him Republicans or it's just a spur of the moment thing. He doesn't realize what signals he's sending. He sort of unnecessarily pokes his thumb in the eyes of leftists that he does still need to support him in this presidency. Not in any way implying that I'm not going to. We're, the horse is jumping the chasm right now. We just have to hope that it sticks the landing. But just some of those moments just didn't have to happen, I think.
Yeah, and there's one thing that is clear to me, and I think should be clear to everybody, which is that Trump and the Republican Party love their base. And you could argue, and I would argue, that Trump overdoes it by thinking that his base is all white supremacists and saying, refusing to denounce white supremacists. But the Democrats make the opposite mistake, where they never cater to their base. In fact, they go out of their way to insult their base as often as possible. In the long run, that does untold damage.
Well, one base is far more homogeneous than the other, and I think that is, that's fact. And I know what you're saying too, Cenk, but at the same time, I don't think there is any base abandonment going on here. I think everybody knows what Joe Biden has to do with the smart politics of it, not, in terms of the campaign politics of it, the electoral politics versus the smart politics of when he, if he wins, when he is a president. So I do think that getting there and once you're there and what you do are two very different things. And I think I think many people will see that with Joe Biden. I think it's very smart to do what he did tonight personally from just purely winning this race. I don't think it's about winning Republicans over. I don't think you win Republicans over. I think that's a fallacy. There's some who don't like voting for Trump and they're going to vote for Biden in ways that they wouldn't vote for Clinton last time. But I do think that there are people who don't like the labels in politics and are afraid of the word socialist and buy into some of what the president is selling. And if they see it denounced, it might help. I think many minds are made up already, though.
Okay, so I promise you one true thing that Donald Trump said. He said, look, I took advantage of a tax law that you and Obama wrote. That was true. So Obama administration created a loophole after the Great Recession. They justified it by saying we need rich people to have more money so that they could stimulate the economy. So we're going to allow you to write off expenses from over 2 years ago, even if they have nothing to do with your current expenses. And Trump jumped into that and wrote off expenses that he had from his many bankruptcies. Now, the reality is Trump still cheated in that case. And that's why the IRS then sued to get the money back, because he couldn't help himself. He didn't abide by the letter of the law. And what he did, if not bordering on tax evasion, is tax evasion. And we'll sort that out legally after the election, I hope. But it is true that Obama created that loophole. And in fact, the reason why the IRS gave him the $72 million they're trying to take back now is because part of the law was the IRS must give people the money based on faith within 90 days. And so that was a terrible mistake. And that's what allowed Trump to basically steal $72 million from U.S. taxpayers. Now, of course, he left out that second part, but the first part about Obama creating that law was true. Michael, I know you got to clear out
clear out just one thing on that, and one thing that if I were Biden that I would do next time is sort of talk about how the vice president doesn't have anything to do with what the policy of the presidency is. And I think we all know that, and I think that he could challenge and talk about Mike Pence in that way. I wouldn't say nothing, but I do think that there, when you talk about taxation, that's an Obama legacy, not necessarily a Biden legacy.
I hear you on that. On the other hand, he takes credit for a lot of things.
Oh, for sure. No, absolutely. But I'm just talking about what you can do and get away with, and he didn't do enough of the other. But you're right. He owns everything good that happened under Obama, but he doesn't fight back at everything that's labeled as a bad thing to come out of that administration and tie him to it. But that's just little stuff.
Right. And then now I don't want you to get the wrong impression, because I told you basically this is our fact check. We found one true thing Trump said. Almost everything else was a lie. And it's not an exaggeration. I mean, when he got into mail-in ballots, I mean, it was outlandish. Oh, all these military votes are thrown in the garbage because they said Trump on it. Why would a mail-in ballot write Trump on the outside? That makes no sense, right? They found all these ballots in the creek. What creek? What are you talking about, you lunatic? And then
the Billion Tree Project, I Googled it afterwards. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. Right.
Of course.
At his State of the Union, Anna, he introduced a trillion tree project. So it's been cut from a trillion to a billion, and none of it exists. So.
Well, there is the Trillion Tree campaign, which doesn't have anything to do with him.
Totally different. It's international, right? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, and I mean, I'm going to do a plug for a sponsor just because it's perfect. There actually is a campaign by Aspiration and they've already planted 2 million trees. So we'll only pick sponsors that are actually progressive and wonderful. So that's why I say you should put your money where your heart is and go with folks who are actually trying to do good in the world. So aspiration.com/TYT. They've already planted 2 million trees. Every time you sign up, they plant 10 trees. You could round up to plant more trees. That's a real program as opposed to Trump making up nonsense, right? And then finally, he said already 30 to 40% of the mail-in votes are fraudulent. How do you know? Right. And if they are, why didn't you arrest them? You're the president. I mean, what are you talking about? 30 to 40%? Right. That is so outlandish. It's not anywhere near 3 to 4% historically, let alone 30 to 40%. But on top of that, how would you even know? And if you did know, why didn't you do something about it?
Of course, those are the seeds he's planting for what happens after the election. They're not tree seeds. All right, guys, I'm being kicked out, so I got to go.
All right, thank you, Michael. Yeah. I like security removing Michael in the middle of the show in Cleveland. Okay, that's what you get for asking the communications director for Trump tough questions. But overall, the unbelievable lies from Donald Trump. I don't know if the fact checkers can debunk dozens, maybe even he might have crossed 100 in the lies that he said tonight.
Can I list one more of the things that I think Biden really failed with an opportunity for? Was we knew that the New York Times report was going to come out and that was going to be a big thing. And there's everything that you've said about how he could have harped more on the fact that there's this elitist who's getting away with paying nothing. All of that stuff. All of that is true. But another big failure was that a reasonable person who hasn't read the 10,000 word long New York Times article could come out of that debate thinking what Trump did is extreme but legal, when that is not what you should take away from that article. There are a number of different avenues in that article that the New York Times is going to be expanding on the near future that very much moves into the territory of things that are likely actually illegal. The paying off of his kids as contractors, he did that. That's not in a tax bill. He's not supposed to do that. The seven-seaters investment property that's just a place they live in, that is probably tax fraud. The fact that some of his properties, the operating expenses quintupled from one year to the next, that's not just a totally cool legal thing that he did. There is so much here that is clearly not just the normal rich get to abuse the system sort of thing. He appears to have in multiple cases gone way beyond the law to commit actual tax fraud. But if you 100%. Were just watching this debate, you wouldn't come away with that impression. You'd think, he didn't spend enough.
100%. You're so right. John, you're so right. That was one other thing, and I'm glad that you brought this up. Yeah, you committed tax fraud. Period. That's it. $72 million refund. He got a $72 million refund from the IRS. That's what he's being audited for. I mean, I would say audited for right now, but that audit has been paused because he's the president. He committed tax fraud. Why didn't Biden say it? Just say it. Well, working class Americans in this country have dutifully paid their taxes. You got a tax refund to the tune of $72 million because you committed tax fraud based on what your own former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, said under oath while testifying before the House. Period. That's all you have to say. Anyway, It's just, God, it's so disappointing that we're in the place that we're at right now with this weak ass candidate who doesn't even remember the line of attack to use against this target rich environment. Great. Awesome. Most electable president. Because why? Because Democrats are so feckless and so pathetic that they would rather appeal to like the 2% of never Trump Republicans that run the Lincoln Project while giving the middle finger to progressive voters. Great. We'll see how that works out for you. I hope he wins because Trump is a disaster, but they're taking a giant risk right now with, again, a weak candidate who consistently gets pushed further to the right by Donald Trump. Donald Trump should be laughed at on that stage. Biden should laugh at him. And every time Trump tries to pull him to the right, he should laugh more and talk about why his policies would be better, why progressive policies would be better, why Medicare for all, if he actually supported it, would actually cover every single American in this country right now during this pandemic when tens of millions of Americans were laid off, and as a result, were kicked off of their private health insurance. But Biden can't do that because he's a corporate sellout, and he's unfortunately the better of two evils, the less evil of two evils that we're stuck with for this election at a time when everyone's telling us, oh, this is the most important election of our lifetimes. They're right, it is. And unfortunately, we have a shitty option. And he showed how weak he was on that debate stage. Sorry, I know I'm a little fired up, but I'm just so sick of being stuck in the same position over and over again. And for all the people who think that a third party is the answer, no, it's not. Third party is going to go nowhere. Give me some real solutions.
So
that's where I'm at.
The real solution is we have to find a progressive champion to run in 2024 immediately, because whoever it is going to need 3 years to build up honestly, brand name recognition, positive branding, and get the American people to know them and to find a way around the mainstream media, because the mainstream media not only will not cover them, but they will be furious if they primary Biden or Harris. So we got to get going right away. I don't have an easy answer. John, did you say you have an easy answer? I'm looking forward to it.
Can I say one thing? Just sorry, John. Okay, just one thing. If we put our support behind a progressive, I want a progressive who has a long inventory, huge inventory of brass knuckles. No more of this weak shit, okay? I want brass knuckles. And that's what I want. I don't want any more of this weak equivocating bullshit. Okay, go ahead, John.
I got someone who's got that too. What else do you need? AOC's got it, and I think that AOC has got to be the person. I'm not saying that AOC will be the person. I don't know if AOC is going to be ready to be the person, but on all of these things, I'm assuming, I'm not going to speak for all of you, I think for our main criteria for what a candidate needs to be able to accomplish, and more importantly, what a president needs to be able to both accomplish and prioritize, I think that she leads that group by a good bit.
I think the two most critical elements are authenticity and passion. So let's see if we can find that. Okay. So last thing, I know we're out of time, but we promised it, so I want to do it. What do we think of the moderator? I might surprise you guys, but I want John to lead.
I think that Chris Wallace, every time he did his little almost like Jim Halpert smile at the camera, isn't this ridiculous thing, I wanted to be like, dude, you're working right now. Go do your job. Now, maybe you don't have the capacity, the actual technological capacity to cut his mic. You should have, because you should have known that Donald Trump was going to do this thing. How could you have set this up where you're going to try to appeal to his humanity, him being reasonable? I'm going to ask you to not interrupt. No, he's going to keep doing that. He's going to keep doing it for literally hours, and you're going to allow him to. You're going to occasionally do the thing where you say, now you're going to really like this next question, like you're trying to get a kid to eat a vegetable or something. That was kind of funny. I like that. But no, he just sort of went along with it, and he apparently decided about 16 minutes in, I can't stop him from doing it, so why even bother trying? I'm going to occasionally imply that he should stop, but I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to penalize him in literally any way. And because, yes, he's a Republican who doesn't seem to like Donald Trump, but he's still a Republican, it wasn't just that he let Trump steamroll Biden. It's that he also was framing basically issue from a right-wing point of view. Like, we can't get it twisted that just because he asked Trump hard questions, he is still a right-wing conservative. And so the combination of those things, it was a mess, but not just because of Trump. You don't get mad at the baby for pooping his pants when the parents fed it chili. You're responsible too. And he was pumping him full of chili the whole time. You should have cut him off, but you didn't. So stop laughing and do your job, because the stakes are kind of high here.
So, John, I actually disagree a little bit, but I don't think it matters anyway, because you already won the night with the chili line. So, yeah. But nonetheless, I'll say, look, I've been in debates and I've moderated debates, and that was unmoderatable. And so the only way to get Trump under control there would have been to yell nearly at the top of your lungs and say, no, you will not speak past 2 minutes. right? But then you look
Wait, Cenk. Okay, so look, I will grant you that they apparently couldn't cut the mic. Do you is it crazy to say in future debates they should have the capacity to cut the mic? They did it in the Democratic primary debates. And talk to
They
Andrew
should.
Yang.
I think they should. I absolutely think they should. Trump is going to keep doing this. And by the way, I think Chris Wallace was a disaster. I'm going to go further than John. I absolutely hated every single time he was like, "Oh, Trump, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. Oh, Trump, you're going to love this." Who cares what Trump is going to love? Okay, you're the moderator. How about don't be so considerate of Donald Trump and his feelings. Ask the tough questions of both candidates, and when Trump is interrupting, shut him up. Find a way to shut him up. That's your job as a moderator. But Chris Wallace was like giggling about it. It was super frustrating.
I hear you, Anna, but like he was doing it out of unbelievable frustration. But Chris Wallace has been in media for a long time, and he's a Fox News host. The rest of the moderators left have got to be sweating bullets. Because they are actually not anywhere near as forceful as Chris Wallace. Chris Wallace is actually one of the more forceful guys on TV. Wait till you see what Trump does to those moderators. So I think maybe that you guys are right that the only option they're going to have is to be able to cut the mic. Because if they can't cut the mic, you're going to see in future debates, Trump is going to be worse than this. Now, the opposite argument to not cutting the mic and just letting them do what they do is Trump got killed according to the polling. He did disastrously in this debate. And so he showed his true self, and people didn't like it. So, I keep going back to this because it's so amazing. Frank Luntz is the top Republican pollster. He did a focus group. One of the words that stuck out about Trump was crackhead. It's unreal. I mean, I've never seen that in a debate from any politician, let alone the president of the United States. So crackhead's gonna crackhead. And if the moderator lets him do that in a sense, well, he's exposed him for who he is. But I really thought that was a completely unmanageable debate. I thought Chris Wallace was as forceful as he could have been. He raised his voice. He interrupted. He chided Trump on a number of occasions. I do agree with John that the questions are always from a right-wing perspective. But honestly, John, whether it's Chris Wallace or another mainstream media person, it doesn't really matter. They all frame it from a right-wing perspective, right? And so the last thing I'll give Wallace credit for is the white supremacist question was good because Trump's nuts and he might not denounce white supremacists, and he didn't, so that was a good question. But I don't know if it's more important, but a better question was when he said to him, okay, you think mail-in ballots is deeply fraudulent, and Trump said 30 to 40% of mail-in ballots are fraudulent, which is unbelievable. So Chris Wallace said, you're president right now. What are you going to do about it? And that's what I've been saying on the show. So I was like, a Fox News host said it, right? That's the perfect question. If you're not full of crap and you actually think an enormous percentage of votes are fraudulent, and we're more than a month away from the election, you can do something about it. You can actually say, oh, okay, here's the evidence for how it's fraudulent, and here's what we're going to do about it, instead of just setting up this as one giant excuse for you to try to cheat later, and then when you lose, cry like a baby and claim that you didn't actually lose. And when he asked him that question, Trump had no answer at all. He just kept saying, it's unfair, it's ridiculous, it's unfair. And Wallace repeated a couple of times, okay, then what are you going to do? But Trump has this problem overall, which is he doesn't realize he's president. He just keeps complaining about the state of the country. He keeps complaining about his own officials. He did in other parts of the debate as well. And of course, he famously said about coronavirus, I take no responsibility at all. And that does summarize Trump pretty well. And Wallace did get that out of him. But nonetheless, apparently I'm outvoted 2-1, and John did have the chili line. So sorry, Chris Wallace. Apparently, you didn't pass the test.
Yeah, Wallace sucks. Okay, so real quick, I wanna close our show, unless there's anything else you guys want to add, with Chelsea Christina's Twitter thread about us as hosts and what our personalities are like on the show. I'm not a big zodiac sign type person, but I actually think she's right in how she described us. So let me go ahead and read the thread. The comment about Cenk, the optimist, Anna, the pessimist, and John, the realist, is so true and so on brand for their zodiac signs. Cenk, of course, is an Aries, Anna, the embodiment of a Cancer, and John, a true Aquarius. Anna Kasparian, Cancer, stuck between either caring too much or not wanting to care at all. Highly intuitive, sensitive to the environment, moody, pessimistic, and fiercely protective. Totally on brand, yes. Cenk Uger has a big mouth, but will use it to stick up for you. Aggressive, feisty, slightly childlike, passionate, motivated, optimistic, an all-around confident leader who builds community with their cheerful disposition and relentless determination. Totally 100% true. And then John, Aquarius. An Aquarian simply knows. Intelligent, humanitarian. Stubborn, I disagree with. You're definitely not a stubborn person. Analytical, a true free spirit, loves learning about anything and everything, creative with some unusual hobbies, independent, and a total realist.
Okay.
I let Chelsea, thank you. I really like that thread.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah, so guys, I don't believe in zodiac signs at all, at least until tonight, because that nailed it.
It did nail it.
So, and look, that's a little self-aggrandizing because my description was kind of awesome. What do you mean? A little childlike, a lot childlike. Anyways, but that was weirdly appropriate. Like, cause I always think with zodiac signs, yeah, but if you read it for the other one for you, you can make it sound like it's kind of you too, right? No, Anna's sign didn't match mine at all. Right? Mine's sign didn't match Anna's or John's. Right. And John, I mean, that's his main thing, analytical, etc. So anyway, Chelsea, thank you. That was brilliantly done. And that's why we love doing the show with the members and with our viewers. That's why we say we're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks. Love you guys. Okay. On that note, we've got a great show tomorrow, as you all know, because you're members, 6 p.m. Eastern. I actually have some great interviews at 5:30 I want you to check out, including James Thompson. He was a Just Democrat. 2 miracles for the price of 1. You'll see what I mean in the interview. And then I interviewed a journalist.
And John Show, Damage Report.
Hold on, I'm getting to it. And I interviewed a former ABC White House correspondent about a podcast she's doing about Jeffrey Epstein. Man, it was chilling. So check that out at 5:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. And guys, Damage Report, 10 a.m. Pacific every day. It's amazing. And one of these days, there's even going to be a Damage Report shirt.
Someday.
But meanwhile,
wait, I'm hearing that they just made a shirt about that interaction.
You can get, will you shut up, man? Apparently, there's a shirt on shoptyt.com. Sorry, John, what were you saying?
Nothing, it's a joke. Anyway, we look forward to it someday. Dragon Squad is waiting.
Dragon Squad. All right, I love it. And by the way, use the code BUHBYE, BUHBYE, to buy that resistance gear. I don't like to call it resistance, but anything involved in voting or being anti-Trump. So check that out. All right, see you tomorrow.